Yeah, I saw Todd and then you left him.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay in getting started this evening. We had a few technical difficulties, but
Rain.
so we're on. Welcome to everyone to the February meeting of the curriculum instruction. Mary Jo, has the meeting been posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jo. Appreciate it. We've got lots of very important people in our audience tonight, so we have to be on our very, very best. Very, very best. Okay, it looks like this evening we've got some bright lights. We've got one action item, two information items, and two discussion items. So let's begin by approving the minutes from our January meeting. Could I have a
I'll move
motion?
approval.
Did you make a motion?
I sure
Okay.
did.
Motion and seconded. Okay, all those in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mary Jo, 5-0. Everybody's present tonight, so I'm looking forward to a really interesting meeting. Got a great agenda. And I'd like to begin, first of all, by thanking you, Ryan, for the interview that you granted the Waukesha Freeman on both the grading system and Common Core information. It was extremely well done, and I need to be sure and thank Lauren Anderson when I see her. Is she here? Lauren, thank you. It was excellent, excellent article, very informative, and that's what we want to do, be informative. So thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Ryan, for the interview. Appreciate it. Okay, bright lights. Ryan, would you take us into that, please?
Sure. 2 weeks ago, or January 23rd, I think we had an outstanding day of learning. It was at our midway point or halfway point or end of semester point. And we did a Waukesha 1 conference. Our goal and what we set out to do was to allow every teacher in our system to be a part of something at a level that we tried to compete with. Google does a Google Summit every year in Wisconsin. Costs quite a bit of money to attend, and we don't have the opportunity to send everybody to that. And Apple does different workshops, and so really we set out to try to create our own. And thanks to a team of planners and a visionary team and a logistical team and a launch team, Brian Yearling, I'm going to leave people out if I start naming names, but Brian Yearling started to head really some of this work. Mary Jo really had headed a lot of the components to make this a success. I didn't realize how powerful tablecloths could be at an event, but literally it set a feeling of it was important. People were special, people were appreciated, and then when you turn and look at the pamphlet,
Yes.
you'll see every session, other than a couple of keynotes that we brought in, who are educators around the area or in a neighboring state, every session was put on by Waukesha School District teachers, and they had a chance to design sessions, share their thinking. It was really a sharing. The biggest piece of the day was the I commit station. We asked people to commit to one thing that they saw,
Yes.
not to overwhelm themselves, but to find something that they commit to, and they took those back to the building. Mary Jo put together a 3 to 4 minute selection of images. I thought as for a bright lights, we just go with that 3 or 4 minutes of images of the day. I can talk about a couple of highlights. In here you can see different sessions, but my favorite spot, I spent most of my day there, was the Rockstar stage. It was basically a concept that in 5 minutes, a number of different teachers who are either self-proclaimed or rock stars or have gone platinum with the number of quality lessons that they've provided, came on stage and in 5 minutes shared their passion for what they're doing and what they're trying. And it was a great casual place to stop, and then you got caught in one after the other. So it was hours long of 5 minutes of people sharing things out. But it was a great spot to get a glimpse. And then the breakout sessions afterwards were time for a much more in-depth. So.
It would seem to me, Ryan, from this wonderful conference that we're really leaders in the state, if not in the county and the greater Milwaukee area.
Yeah.
When I talk to people from other schools, we're really farther ahead than everybody. So thanks for your leadership and the leadership of Todd in getting this rolling, because this is really, really wonderful. And how we're using it.
Yeah, it was a great transition moment from are we deploying devices
Yes.
and do we know what to do with them to really the instructional conversation of here
Right.
are some things that they can assist you with. And it was fun to watch that piece happen. We had visitors from all neighboring districts. We invited a number of principals, teachers, tech directors from neighboring districts because we do see that we offer a huge value add to not only our own teachers but to other schools and districts trying this. So we didn't charge them an entrance fee this round, but we are planning on a little bit of an entrance door fee in the future because we do think that this is a workshop that will be well attended by all.
Well, and I think probably the most important, attractive part is that our own people ran it,
Yeah.
you know, our own learners. So that was wonderful. Thank you. It was a great day. Okay, yes. Yes, I was going to say, what else? Where else are we going with this?
Last one.
Karen has some, oh. okay.
Yes.
So what was some of the feedback?
I think the feedback was outstanding. What we heard, we did a formal survey and some formal feedback sessions to kind of guide our future planning. But, you know, the challenges in professional development, especially in the middle of the year when people have a long task list of other things that are pressing, from grades to time to organize and get ready for second semester, the feedback we were really pleased with, because I think people felt that it applied to them. I think people felt that there was choice to pick what they needed to do. I know a lot of people said, and I don't want to undersell this, that it felt special. There was a lot of time in planning that team that put it together to make the building feel like you were at a conference. Everything from name badges to, almost everywhere you turned, there was something new and something that people thought about. So I think people noticed the time that was put in to support them. But I also do think that some of the feedback was, it was amazing how far we've come in about a year and a half time, where these technology tools that we've converted to are a part of our life in so many ways, and you can see by the session, so.
Right. Mr. Baumgart, thank you for being there.
Yeah, I'll give you some feedback too. I was there for part of the morning and part of the afternoon, and I guess what I would say is the energy level was very positive. The people that were there were really enjoying it. And I attended a couple sessions and the rock stage, where you really got these 5-minute bits. And I guess the thing that, if I could put it in simple words, it demonstrated that we have not simply just put iPads out there for people to have in their hands. Every one of the presentations or presenters that I heard had a message about a way to use this, maybe a new way to use it, and people were buying into it. I don't know how many people were there, but it was a huge population there, and 1,200. And the buy-in was evident. In fact, some of the rooms you couldn't get into.
Wow.
They were that popular. Therefore, you stood at the rock stage, and you got blasted with these ideas. And the fact that people were coming up with things that other people were going to try and stuff, the commitment boards. If you walked around at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and looked at the commitment board, the things that the teachers say they're going to try. We are doing more than just having iPads in the rooms.
Yes, we are.
We are using them
Yes, we are.
positively.
Yes, we are. Ryan, was this a professional development day for the entire district? So people were expected to come because there was no school that day, is that correct?
Right,
Okay.
so we had the 23rd off, which was Friday. We also had the 26th off, but the 23rd, so we knew we had an audience, and we were challenged to really make the day as meaningful as we could. And that's a kind of an ongoing challenge with professional development, is finding that balance between task and to-do lists and things that we feel pressure to do right away, as well as balance it with learning opportunities. But I think there was we struck a balance with that, with good choice and some learning, and also with people that saw it wasn't an over amount. They could kind of grab what they
Right.
needed. And
Right. It
run.
looked like it, your offerings were for all levels, but how can I take it back to my classroom tomorrow and use it? And that's what I liked. So thank you so much for doing that. Are you going to do it again next year, you think?
Well, the planning team that worked hard, really, really hard to this, and you can't say enough about what
Obviously.
they were doing to make this happen. We want to do it again next year. We're looking at a couple options, but we haven't determined anything. We have tentatively slated it for that mid-year again, with a task. Now we have a task to raise the bar. But we've also looked a little bit at the summer as a part of our natural summer series that we do.
okay.
We think that might be an opportune time, not only for our district, but for other districts to be a part of it. But it's really going to be logistics. And I think with all the time that went into it, it's one of our challenges of, how can we repeat this? And people have worried about, if you do it too much, does it take away some of the newness? So we've got some things to look at.
I think, we need to keep the public apprised of all the wonderful professional development that we have when I think of what we do during the summer. And then during the school year, we're really on top of everything. So, kudos to you. We've got a well-informed staff. Thank you.
Can
Yes, please.
This is an unscheduled bright lights, so forgive me, and if this doesn't work, can you hear it? I didn't have it turned up real loud, but, okay, anyway, that's just a little clip. But in honor of our bands, all three, but it was at South, and so South was the feature. I don't know, did you get there?
I was not able to make it because I was there in the morning with.
Yeah, if I had it to do over again, I'd just emphasize to everyone, phenomenal day. On Sunday, the University of Wisconsin band, which is better than any in the country, came to Waukesha South. The gym was packed. And it was a fundraiser for the South band. But they show up, they had marched in with 8 tubas, 36 trombones. We counted them, and about 30 trumpets, and phenomenal. And I said to my husband, I don't think that famous director will come, you know. I
Oh,
mean,
sure he won't.
he was there, Mike LaCrone, who's about, what is he, about 86? I don't know.
No.
Oh, yes, he is. Anyway, he was there, and they put on this amazing, almost 2-hour program, and they honored our students and our bands, which are phenomenal. And then they had people who were from Waukesha West that are in the marching band at Madison stand up, people from South, people from North. And then later, kind of quietly, he had also people from Aguanago. But the whole idea was to honor our bands, and they must have done pretty well, because they were selling all kinds of Waukesha, Wisconsin Red this and that and everything, and also the tickets sales went to support our bands.
Wonderful.
And the turnout, it was just phenomenal. That South Gym has probably never been
Oh, that's
more
great.
crowded, except in a basketball state, something. Anyway, it was just incredible. So, a great thing that happened in our district, and talk about bright lights, that was a bright light.
Thank you for sharing that. We need to continue to celebrate all these great things going on around our district. Thank
And
you.
I have more, but I won't plan for you right now. But I have a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Lanjo. Well, anybody else? Okay. Ryan, anything else on bright lights? No. Okay, so then, moving on, we're going to get into our first action item, AP course policy. Will you take us into that, Ryan?
Sure, and I'm going to introduce a team that's going to come up, which includes Dave Laborde, Tim Joint, Jody Landish, Rick Nedesheim, and then Jean Ann and Ron. We'll see where we go, how many chairs we have. Our team tonight is going to be looking at a recommendation and proposing in addition to our current policy 5152, really with the purpose tonight of looking at the policy to match the goal to increase participation and success rates for students taking college board exams after enrolling in our AP course placement. So the team is going to go into a little bit of detail about where this conversation started, where we're currently at, and why we're looking at this action here tonight.
Okay, welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
I can start out. Good evening. I'm here with the high school team. Ryan pretty much did the introduction, but we've solicited feedback from students most importantly, so I need you to know sort of the process that is built up to get here. We've been talking with teachers and administrators over the past several years about the weighted credit issued for advanced placement courses. And currently in our district, we offer weighted credit just for taking the course. So through some involvement and wanting to have increased participation in the AP testing component and allowing all students to be able to take the test in order to provide them, most importantly, but also our teachers feedback in terms of the curricular area, we want all students to be able to take that test. And so we're going to give you a little bit of background, a little bit of the data from our school district. Tim's going to talk about some of our neighboring districts who have been doing this for years and offer you the opportunity to hopefully approve the vote this evening. So.
And actually, one of the reasons that I've been a little bit passionate about this is I actually taught AP Physics in a district that actually did require the AP test upon completion of the course in order to get the weighted credit. The one thing that it did for my kids was it helped them to realize that the 9 months of good, hard work that they put into those AP classes, and we know it's a lot of really, really hard work, it gives them a chance to show exactly what they know. And sometimes by pushing a student to take the AP test, they surprise themselves with a passing grade of a 3 or a 4 or a 5. So I really support it. I did a survey of some surrounding schools, and it actually appears that Arrowhead also requires the AP test to be taken, as well as Nicolay, Oak Creek, and New Berlin enjoys about 100% participation rate with the AP test when it comes to an AP class. So that, it's rapid feedback, or it's not rapid feedback, but it's good feedback for our students, and it's really good feedback for our teachers as well, to be able to know exactly where they may need to put in some work to make sure that all of our students are successful in years going forward.
I don't really know if there's much more to say. We kind of want to open up for questions.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, Mr. McCaffrey has the first question.
Well, has this gone through policy yet?
No, we're expecting, depending on here, obviously policy and then full board, so, correct.
What is the issue that we're trying to correct? Because Jody, you said that we're correcting an issue. I guess what would be the issue? Are we,
Currently, right now, we offer a weighted credit
Curriculum.
or a weighted GPA credit for taking an AP class, whereas we don't require the students to take the AP test at the end of course completion. So students will take an AP class without the intention of taking the AP test at the end and still get the weighted credit.
okay, so what's the issue?
The issue
Well, I
is,
mean, how does that adversely affect the student, the school district? I mean,
adversely affect, I don't know if I'd say it adversely affects, but what it does potentially do is occasionally, there's a little bit of GPA number playing, and the more AP classes that I take, the higher GPA I get without the intention of taking an AP class. It's
Test me.
Test, thank you. And the difficult part being, for some of our teachers, enjoying a full class of participation gives them really good feedback on what they're actually teaching in the classroom, as opposed to just the select few that decide to take it.
okay. So say that they failed the test, or not failed the test, because, but didn't get the college credit, they would not get the weighted?
They would still get the weighted credit. It
Okay,
is
so they
purely
don't have
just
to
you,
pass the test, they just
Correct.
need to take it.
correct.
Because the scores don't come back until the summer.
Right,
And
okay.
so all the seniors that took it, they'd be on their way
okay.
anyway.
Okay.
Another aspect of what's this solving, we have other classes as well that are plenty rigorous, very challenging, high academic courses, and those classes don't enjoy the weighted grade. And so this is something very concrete we can pin to. There's something very specific that differentiates this class from the other rigorous classes that don't enjoy the benefit of the weighted grade.
Okay, so you're looking at maybe add some rigor? Rigorous is rigorous whether you take a test at the end or you don't, right? So this would be adding, this would be requiring
it would-
more rigor in the end.
On the student's part, to make sure they're ready for the test.
Okay. How many students, I'm sorry,
No,
how
you
many
go ahead.
students do not take the test that take these AP?
In a survey that we conducted, only 17% of our students currently don't take
Don't take the
the
test.
test. 83% already are taking
Pretty
the
good.
AP test associated with the course.
That's pretty good.
Yes, Dr. Landro.
Thank you. Couple questions. I know that even back when I taught AP history a while ago, it was expensive, and now it's really expensive. So for that 17%, are we aware of any of them? And I know we can say we offer. What do we offer?
What I was going to say is that the cost this year is $91 to take the test. Students in our district who receive free or reduced lunch do not have to pay that cost at all.
Might be some that don't get free and reduced lunch,
Right.
that still don't want to cough up $91, right?
Right,
And
yep.
we're saying
And
you have to.
We definitely want to work with them to set up sort of payment plans. It's a lot to ask for at one time, so kids can kind of pay that money piecemeal, toward the end of the year. There are some students at all three high schools and E-Achieve, the fourth high school, that they're just not able to cover the cost. And I think the district's attitude has always been, we're not going to stand in the way of students who want to take that AP test as a culminating activity to a course that they've put a lot of effort into. So there is some money that, the district covers so that students are actually able to take those tests. We never really want financial hardship to stand in the way of a student challenging themselves to take that.
I understand that philosophy, but I wondered in the 17%, how many of them either know that or are willing to step forward and put their necks out to do that? Because that's a factor.
Yeah, I would say, this is my 9th year at South working with AP exams. I would say I do have those kind of confidential conversations
Okay.
with parents and students. At South, I would say it might be anywhere from 8 to maybe 12 families or kids per year it's a fairly small number. But we do try to work with them, and I think families struggle with that too. Like you said, there's a level of, you know, kind of maybe embarrassment, but we try to do our best to keep it confidential and support them.
Okay.
I think the other part is with the requirement comes the knowledge of, okay, as I'm doing course requests, which are happening right now in February, next year, over a year from now, I'm gonna have to be prepared for that type of a payment, so we can spread that out over a payment plan as well.
Sure, because we have kids, I know when my daughter was there, some people took 3 AP tests in May.
Right.
You know, you're talking big bucks. The other question I have, and it's been one that I've been concerned about, I know the New York Times has been on it and some of the news magazines, is growing resistance. And I wondered if you've been to AP conferences lately, but growing resistance on the part of many universities, some of them the leading lights, to not offer the credit. I mean, that's starting to disappear. And there's a kickback, so that's an issue.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
I think, Ellen, what we've seen is, it's not only growing, there are fewer schools, that's true, that are accepting the AP class for credit. And the other thing is, they're also, the ones that have upped it from a passing score of a 4 to a 5.
Yeah,
So, and another qualifier that some of them have put on is that when you still enroll in the same course at the university level or a corresponding class, and then they give you retroactive credit.
Right, the
Not
retro.
credit per se for the class you took in AP. So
Yeah.
it is changing, and we tell the kids, I know, when they're doing their college and career planning, that they have to be careful. They shouldn't just assume that the AP classes are gonna be covered at a university.
right, absolutely,
I think the
Dave.
days of
Yeah.
where you could enter and be guaranteed
Yeah, and
15
it used
credits
to
or
be
so on
a
are
3,
probably passed.
almost everywhere. You could get, you know, at least a couple credits, and now it's 4, in some places 5, and some
Right.
places, as you say, you get even a 4 or 5, and you still have to take that introductory course.
You bet, yep,
Yeah, so it's all changed.
yep.
Thank you.
So what happens to me if I take a AP course and I do well in it, but I don't want to take the test? But how would that affect my grade? I wouldn't get the weighted grade, is that what?
Correct,
I
that's
have
what
to
the-
take the
Yep.
test to
That's
get
what
the
our
weighted
proposal
That's
grade?
the
would
only
be.
effect.
Okay,
This proposal doesn't say that you have to take the test. It
Yes,
just
I-
says that there's a consequence of not getting a
okay.
weighted grade.
So if I do A work, I'm still going to get an A, but I'm not going to get any weight added to that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Yes. Ms. Reinacek.
Thank you. So, in my house, we're doing a little different, but I didn't even realize that the test doesn't really count, or it doesn't really matter what you get on it. Like I told Jaden, if we'll pay for the test, but if she doesn't do well on it, then she's gonna pay for it. But I don't know if there's any incentive to actually do well on the test. I mean, if it's 2 hours of, is the incentive that the colleges are looking at your test?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Baumgartner.
You answered part of my question, because when I first read this, I had the immediate reaction that this is going to be addressing at the kids that take it just for the grading advantage. But a logistical question came up in my mind. At what point during the course, taking of the course, do they decide whether they're going to take the exam or not?
Oh, there's a registration.
Yeah, there's a registration period going on right now. It's typically about February 1st to March 1st. That's when we have kids enroll or sign up for the test. And the reason why we do that is we have to order the test through College Board by early in March. So ideally, it'd be nicer if we could wait till later, but we can't.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to stir in my mind here was, if a kid realizes he's having a difficulty with the AP class, they have time to decide, they don't really have a lot of time, because it's 4 months in advance, really. But if they're really not doing well, they can say, I'm not going to take the test, I'm back to the standard grading, and I'm not spending the money.
Correct. And a lot of those discussions and occurrences usually happen at semester, which is back in January,
Right.
and a little bit more of a logical time.
So you've had a conversation with your
Correct.
teacher, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So weighted grade is if you get an A, you get an extra .33.
Correct. 5 point instead of a 4 point.
Pardon me?
It's a 5-point, so an
Oh,
A
it's
would
a
be 5
5-point.
points versus an A in a non-AP class, which would be 4
Okay.
points.
You know, I have a question I need to ask you. I have a granddaughter at one of the schools that you mentioned, and she took an AP course, and she had complained that it wasn't different or challenging, it was just more work. And I'm not so sure that that's what AP classes should be like, so could you clarify that for me, please?
Sure, absolutely. The rigor that comes along with an AP class is something that's very exciting for a lot of kids. And coming from South and as a former AP teacher, it's something that we encourage almost all of our kids to take so that they get used to the rigor of a collegiate level class. It can be very telling for students for them to know, okay, am I prepared for a collegiate level class, or do I maybe need to do some more work and build some other skills in order to do that? We encourage almost all of our students to try an AP class just to get used to that. It doesn't always mean more, but it
Okay.
does mean higher rigor.
Right, right, but she claims it's not higher rigor, it's just more work. And that was not
Not-
challenging enough for her.
Not always the case. Can they contain more work? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, okay.
But I would not say that that's the one telltale sign or the
Right.
one telltale difference
And
between
it
a
shouldn't
regular
be
course.
that way. It
Correct.
should be rigorous and more informative, I would think, and take you beyond what you get in high school, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just needed to make sure. Mr. McCaffrey?
Never mind.
Are we concerned that we're gonna lose students not taking AP courses, 17%? Have we built that in, that we're gonna lose 5% of those kids, or?
We asked them that. Do you have the?
I don't have the data in front of me. We did ask them, and of that 17%, it was only a portion of those students that said, well, then I'm not gonna take the AP class if this is an absolute requirement, which, again, they could still take the AP class, they
Yeah.
can still not take the test, they
Right.
just won't get the weighted grade associated with it. So based on what we saw, it's fairly minimal. I don't have the exact number with me, though.
Okay. And then the only other question I have is where were we gonna insert this sentence? Because, and I might have just missed it because I'm fixating on this highlighted area that is not the sentence. Usually when we
page 2.
have policies come before us, it would be added, like this would be the actual sentence, or else we would cross out lines and then add the lines below. I was just wondering where we are planning to add it, or are we waiting for policy to determine where to add it?
In the paragraph that says specific courses are designated for weighted grades, is that the highlighted one you're looking at?
No, the highlighted one that I have is, it
Under
says,
grading scale.
weighted grading applies only to advanced placement courses beginning with the class of 2005. So I'm wondering, are
Okay.
we replacing
The,
that?
Sure.
I wonder whether
the sentence that we're proposing
Yes.
would come right after the sentence that says, grades of D+ or below are given regular course grade point equivalencies. And then the new sentence that we're proposing, courses designated as advanced placement will only receive the weighted grade point if the student participates in the AP test given by the college board.
Policy would insert it, okay.
Yep.
So
That was-
policy will move it to a letter B, a letter 2 grading, B, after the third paragraph,
Okay,
okay?
yeah, I would, hunting that sentence up.
It'll come to policy revised.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it usually does come revised.
Okay.
Barbara?
Yes,
This is an action item, right?
yes, sir, it is.
I would like to move that I would like to make the motion that they move forward with the modification to policy 5152 to change the practice to include the weighted grading only for those taking the test.
Okay, is there a second, please?
Is that right?
Close.
Close enough?
Is there a second?
Yeah, she did.
Second, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the AP course policy as amended. So any further, pardon me?
I have a question.
Oh, okay, yes, I was just gonna say, are there?
Yeah, after
Further
Rick pointed
questions?
out where it's going to be inserted, if you take the test, but your grade in the course is a D+, it's not going to be weighted whether you take the test or not, right?
Correct.
Okay. Because it seems strange that it follows that sentence, and so you don't want it to qualify that sentence.
That's why I asked.
Yeah. Anyway, you might want to think about where that's placed.
Might be before
Okay.
that.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Maybe before that, maybe more.
Yeah. And then just a quick comment, and I'm sure Rick and anybody who's taught, I know in history, if you take an AP course, it's a whole different approach. It's not more work. You have to deal with all these original source documents, you have to analyze them as a historian would, and it's fabulous. And I think the kids who are interested in doing that gain a lot.
Sure.
But it's a whole different kind of thinking even, too.
Thank
But-
you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
So, and my question before we vote is, up until now, we would give weighted grading even if they didn't take the test. Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay, any further questions, discussion? Okay, then, ready for the vote? All those in favor, reply by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 5-0, Mary Jo. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Okay, the next order of business this evening is special education service model. Joe Cook is going to present.
Before you have a document, it's 17 pages in length. What we aim to do, based off of the requests of a couple of committees, we've had some conversations around special education. What we try to do is to begin to capture what that looks like in the district. We provide services to students in 10 disability areas, from learning disabilities to orthopedic impairments, visual impairments, hearing impairments. So there's 10 areas that we provide services to. I think to make one big point of emphasis in this is we don't look at this in program language. We don't have a place specifically where we go with students that we try to fit them into. We try to meet students where they're at, be it a
You
student.
mean like a CD classroom or an EBD classroom?
Exactly.
That's
We-
different.
We
That's
do
new.
provide supports for students in a classroom setting for periods of the day. But we begin our conversations around students around the general education classroom, the least restrictive environment.
Right.
And we provided targeted services to students, keeping that in mind. Many of our students participate for a full school day in what is a regular education classroom with the assistance of a paraprofessional, small group support within that classroom environment. Some of our students need to be removed from the classroom for different periods of the day to get some assistance with reading, behavior, mathematics. When you look at some more of our low incident areas such as vision, deaf and hard of hearing, we have to provide some very targeted services to students there. If you were to go to Lowell Elementary School or Butler Middle School, you would be able to observe our deaf and hard of hearing program in action with our sound booths for students who have cochlear implants. So this really is a very comprehensive document that you have in front of you. It includes two sets of information. The first set is what is the criteria. Any student who's identified in the district with having a disability must go through an evaluation. Even if they come to us with a report and evaluation from Children's Hospital, from a private practitioner, we still have to go through an evaluation process for students to receive special education services. Those evaluations take on many different aspects. Some students, for instance, students with a hearing impairment need to come with an audiology report that would show what their level of deafness actually is. Other students will go through a more curriculum-based process, such as the specific learning disabilities criteria, where we're looking at how we're providing targeted instruction to students to see if that actually results in an improvement in academic performance, and then we're performing a standardized assessment at that time. I'm open to any questions if you've had a chance to put your eyes on this and ask any. I don't know if it does us a great deal of service, though, to go through 17.
Well, I just thought it was important that we understand the amount of programs, that we understand that they're not segregated programs like they used to be. There used to be LD classrooms, CD classrooms, especially in my day, where the kids were mainstreamed as needed, but now we don't have those specific classrooms anymore, that kids are in regular classrooms and then serviced according to their needs. I did have a question about the significant developmental delay. Is that a new terminology for what we used to call multiple handicap?
No, significant developmental delay, SDD, is a disability area for students that are right now 3 to 6 years old.
Okay.
It is oftentimes in early childhood special education, students may display characteristics of autism. Some of that could strictly just be on a developmental level. They were not exposed to groups of individuals, therefore they may show some withdrawnness. They may have some sensory needs. It really is an area where we're allowed about a 3-year period of time to tease out, is it autism, is it a cognitive disability, is it a speech and language impairment that's impacting socialization. Many times after that 3 to 6 year window, when students hit that 6 year, we do an evaluation. Many students are dismissed from special education at that time, or just given the maturity and the access to a school environment, many students were able to really target in to what their needs are and what they would qualify for special ed for.
Do we still call students, with severe multiple handicapping conditions, do we still call them that, or what's the new terminology?
There really isn't a term for that. I mean, it really falls into, looking at person-first language, treating the child as a student first. So we use terms like students with a learning disability, students with a cognitive disability. When we do diagnose a student with a disability, and perhaps there are multiple areas that they would qualify for special education, such as having a cognitive disability and an emotional behavioral disability and a speech and language impairment, we really look at the primary disability area if we were to categorize. But that categorization accesses services. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go into a CD program or an EBD program. Going back to your example about, special education's about a 40-year-old discipline, maybe a little bit older than 40 years. So to start out, it was trying to get students out of homes, out of segregated facilities, into the public school. Once students were in the public school, it was really trying to target what the area of need was, and then we'd have a classroom where those students would be getting their services. And then they would, the mainstreaming concept where they would go to a math class or an art class or so on and so forth. Really, we've kind of flipped that upside down now. We look at the general education classroom as the most appropriate place for all students, and it's our job to try to provide the supports to students so that they can access that curriculum.
Okay. I just hope that, that there's a realization that we do have students that aren't in an academic program, that, is that not, that continues to be true, is that?
All of our students are in an academic program working on either what are the adopted state standards or the essential elements, which would have been the old Wisconsin alternate assessment standards. So we have all of our students, I would say, would be in an academic program. The students where we would be very functional would be those students that are attending services at the Waukesha Transition Academy, the SAIL program, where students are accessing functional daily living skills, community experiences and such. We do provide that at the middle and at the high school level as well, but that is really where the adaptive program comes in.
Well, help me understand, Joe. I'm familiar with a program, it used to be in my building, and it was called Multiple Handicap. And those children were severely retarded children. Most of them couldn't walk, couldn't talk, and so we weren't working on reading, writing, and math, et cetera. We were working on eating, focusing, et cetera, things like that. Now, I thought we still had a program like that.
We provide services to students who have those needs.
Yes,
We are
yes.
providing functional curriculum to the
Right.
students who need a functional curriculum.
Right, that's a functional curriculum.
But it does have a curriculum base. For
Oh, sure.
students who may not necessarily be moving through, for instance, a traditional math sequence where
Mm-hmm.
you'd be doing foundational work to lead you to algebra, geometry, algebra 2, so on and so forth. We are still working on what would be the life skill mathematics, if we can address those with
If
students.
you can.
So,
Because I can remember that our students, I had 10 students, and none of them were in that category. It was just, working on eating and those kinds of things. Okay, but we still have those kind of programs. And I
We
guess
still
I
provide-
wanted people to realize that we do have, severely, retarded and multiple handicapped children that we serve.
we do have a full spectrum of students that we provide services to. For instance, in the realm of special ed, we will have students who could also receive services under the gifted and talented umbrella, either in one area or multiple areas. And we also have students who would be working on those most basic skills
Right, right.
that would help them transition into adulthood.
Joe, talk a little bit about cross-categorical, because is it true teachers are not coming out of universities any longer with like an LD certification? They say they're cross-categorical. Could you
Correct.
clarify that?
Most new teachers are coming out of school up to about a year ago. It was called the 801 Cross-Categorical Special Education License, and they differentiated that based off of the age group that you would be working. So an elementary license, a middle high license, some people would come out with a 3 to 21 license. But it really came down to the age range. And what the universities were doing to try to meet the demands of the district, after districts moved away from a program-based model, an EBD program, an SLD program, so on and so forth, they needed teachers who were licensed to evaluate a student who perhaps has a cognitive disability, a student who has an emotional behavioral disability, a student who has a specific learning disability. So in order to provide teachers to us that were able to do that, they went from graduating with an ED license, LD license,
Right.
to the cross-categorical license. We service students based off of that philosophy, where students will progress through our system. And for instance, a teacher who's working at the second and third grade level perhaps will have students with autism, students with cognitive disabilities, and students with learning disabilities. And it's through the nuances of the schedule that they provide the individual specialized services to the kids in the classroom.
Thank you for clarifying that. And then if I just may ask another question, unless somebody else has a question.
Go ahead, and then I will.
Okay. When I left teaching, we did not have a terminology autism. But that doesn't mean we always have had autism children. Could you tell us about the emergence of that particular category?
Yeah, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a medical doctor. I can only, grab the bits and pieces of things that I've read about it. There used to be about a 1 in 2,000 birth incident of autism. One child out of every 2,000 was born with autism. The last number that I heard, I think it was down into about the 1 in 50, 1 in 60 range, births to autism. There is speculation, and I will emphasize speculation, that there are environmental factors that are associated with that it could perhaps be related to the birth age of parents. They've also changed the diagnosis, though, for autism, and I think if you saw in the news over the past year, Jerry Seinfeld indicated that he had autism. They've had some conversations in the recent edition of the DSM of getting rid of the category of Asperger's and rolling it all
Yes,
into
yes,
autism. So I think that some of the identification has to do with the definition of what it means to have autism.
Okay.
And again, some of it is in child, some of it is environmental. So
Okay.
there's a variety of reasons.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Dr. Landro?
Oh, hi, yeah, thanks for all your work on this, and I was amazed to realize how many, I counted 10.
Correct.
Okay, but I just wonder, and this is just a very minor point, but just for whoever is gonna read this next, when I first read it, and I realized I numbered it wrong, it really helped me when I went back and reread it, that I put numbers, because you say areas of impairment, and I know it's alphabetical, pretty much,
Yep,
not altogether. But if you could just put like a number 1
Oh, sure, absolutely.
to, through 10, because you're kind of reading through and you think, oops, am I on a different category? Oops. So that would really be helpful. But otherwise, thank you for doing it. And then I just want to, maybe I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize for that, but the program that, we have invited people to, and there was a small turnout, ACAP, I hope you'll get down and visit them. You really need to. And they just were recognized by the Green Bay Packers as one of the outstanding
Yes.
programs for service to, and it's pretty much post-18-year-olds, but right 18-and-a-half-year-olds and up. And it's right in our community, and they've been just award-winning, and I just want to invite you to go down.
I will
and
absolutely make
see
it a
them.
point. As I'm now here for about a half of a
I
year, I've
know,
got a
you
little bit of
just
traction now. I
started.
can, I can take
I
some
know.
time to do that. Also, for those of you who were at the F&F committee when there was some information presented on our alternative placements, during the second semester this year, I'm going to be spending some time going to those schools and centers where we're sending students as well. So I have a deeper understanding of the programs that are out there
Great.
for our students and then our young adults as well.
Okay, super, thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. So I just wanted to just share a little story about the SAIL kids, our SAIL students. So when it was time for kids to paint the guitars for Guitar Town last
Yes.
year, Harvey Phillip got a guitar, which is now East, and but the SAIL is considered a school, right? It's a program within a school, but it was. Well, Jen at the time said, I really want these kids to have a guitar, but we ran out of guitars. So it just so happened that the kids at Harvey Phillip, or East, painted their guitar, and it was a phoenix kind of rising from the ashes, because that was their mascot. And then I took the guitar to SAIL, and the SAIL kids were able to do the finish on it. And so they didn't have to stay in the lines, they didn't have to worry about anything like that. They were just able to paint this guitar, and they had so much fun. But to go back to like what they are actually learning and what their day is like, they needed to, like, their teachers assisted them on saying, now what you do when you meet someone new, and they said, hi, it's very nice to meet you, my name is, and all of those things that we just kind of take for granted, and we just kind of say, and they're learning all of that. And one of the gentlemen, he was going to be working at TJ Maxx. And so we were painting, and I said, so, his name, I said, so, I'm gonna pretend I'm a customer, and I'm gonna ask you a question. And his eyes got big, and I said, so, and I asked him a question that he would be asked, and then the teacher's like, hey, now what would you do if someone in the store asked that? And I said, do you need people from the community to come in and interact with them, and maybe businesses? She said, absolutely. So I was just gonna go around to a few, like maybe a woodworker, a carpenter, could maybe build some birdhouses with them. Or if anyone has any ideas, she said, we absolutely welcome that. Any chance that we can get for them to be familiar with the different businesses and what life is going to be like outside these walls, because they've always been in a school and always been in a building, and they're trying to, little by little, have them kind of interact with the community. So if there are any chances, but, okay, so the icing on the cake is now, they didn't know what they were going to do with the guitar, because one school wanted it, and now they're both in the same school. They're all in the same, so there's a big display case, and they're putting it there. So how that came about was that they could do it together. And I heard that the kids from Harvey or East are playing basketball with them, and they're doing all sorts of things throughout the day, and it's just been a really good match. So.
Yeah, there's been some very good collaboration between the East teachers and the WTA teachers that are there, bringing students together, the positive peer mentoring, the time that the kids are spending together in the gym, the school grounds, the little coffee shop that they have on the first floor there. The East students frequent that regularly on their way up to class for their partial day program. So it really is a nice pairing of school programs that we offer here.
So did you get that the kids at SAIL are making coffee for all
Oh,
the
yes,
teachers?
I
Okay.
visited there, yes.
And I just wanted to do a shout out. So Joe's wife is supposed to be having a baby, and we said, you cannot, he told her, you can't have it before my meetings next week. And I'm like, you know, it doesn't go that way, Joe, but
Thursday is the due date, yes.
Thursday's the due date. So he's got to make it through tonight's meeting and tomorrow. We'll see if he's here. So you can say, I love you, honey, on camera, or whatever you need to do. Just
I'm
wait,
sure she's
wait.
asleep by now. It's been a, it's been a long 40 weeks for her, so.
Do you have your home, do you have your phone on?
Yes, it's right,
That's
right next to me. If I do run out of here, excuse me.
Third baby, I said, and he's an hour away from home.
I know
So I'm
he
like,
is.
Joe, he's like, oh, she'll be fine. The guys,
We've got family nearby, so.
and we want some cigar, or, you know, like the gum kind.
You want a cigar? I don't.
No, the gum, the pink or the blue,
Oh.
you know, that kind next time. Just kidding.
Joe, I have another question. I
Sure.
think the program or the services that are hardest for parents to get their arms around is that other health impaired. Could you talk
Right.
about that a little bit? What qualifies? Is it a doctor's recommendation? Is it our recommendation?
It's
It's the
a-
toughest.
Yeah, it is, again, it doesn't go off of, we will take any medical report and consider that as part of our evaluation. But again, the student still has to be presented to us either by a parent, by a doctor, by a classroom teacher. They have to make the recommendation for the referral. We go through the evaluation process. We have students who are categorized as other health impairments who have had, I guess to boil it down, it's a medical condition that is
It
having
is
a
a
negative,
medical condition.
that is having a negative impact on the school, the students' performance in the schools. Oftentimes, we hear about attention deficit hyperactivity, ADD,
Yes.
ADHD, where there's a diagnosed condition, again, going through evaluation that leads to placement for other health impairments. We service students in there who do have the health need that requires additional assistance at school, who have behavior needs due to a health impairment with learning needs. I mean, there really is a variety of
Yes.
need
Yes, there
that
is.
falls under other health impairment. It's a category that within the past few years, I did talk about at the last meeting, the new learning disabilities criteria. It's an area that we're keeping close eye on. We don't want it to be an umbrella type label in the district. We still want to continue to do very good, thorough evaluations of students. And that's kind of a statewide thing right now where, how are students falling into OHI? What is the evaluation? Why are these students being referred? Interventions perhaps that are taking place outside of that. Do you need to consider a 504 plan
That's
instead of OHI? We're really putting a lot of things on the table and doing some professional development with our staff around that.
So do the OHI kids have an IEP?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Any, of the 10 areas that you saw there, if a student qualifies for special ed and needs services, they would have an IEP.
All right, now tell me a little bit about, or explain to us a little bit more about 504. That's another bugaboo.
504, it is part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's the education portion of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I really could probably do a full workshop presentation with everybody on it. Again, to boil that one down, it comes down to accommodations that students need to access curriculum. It is protected, just like an IEP is. It has legal protections for the students. It has an evaluation process for identification. Recently, 2009, when the Americans with Disabilities Act was amended, the umbrella for 504 got a little bit bigger. So we're having to consider and evaluate students in a much wider area than we had to beforehand.
Okay. Who decides on the 504? Does that come from a doctor? Does that come from a school district?
Again, if there's a report from a doctor, we take that into consideration. But again, it's an evaluation done in the district.
Okay. Do doctors really know what 504 plans are?
Some have a very thorough understanding of 504 and special education. Some don't have as deep of an understanding of that.
Because some parents I know get frustrated. They'll say, well, we have a 504 plan, but this isn't happening and that isn't happening, but it not necessarily may be part of the plan, is that correct?
Yeah, so in either situation, you have to determine, I guess to talk about special ed first. Special ed is a service that's being provided to someone. 504 is an accommodation, and you need to bring a team together to really talk about
Yes?
what is appropriate for the student. And again, taking into the multiple factors, perhaps an evaluation that was done by district staff compared to an evaluation that was done by an outside provider, information from parents, information from teachers, psychologists, social workers and counselors, anybody who has a conversation in hand on the child over the course of the day, they would be part of that evaluation process.
Well, Joe, any other comments or questions? Well, thank you for this. This was very, very informative, and I think the community and, the school board needs to know about all these 10 programs and the different categories, because there's a lot.
Yeah, and just, forecasting ahead a little bit, there is a portion of special education that talks about related services, and I do intend on presenting that information to
Great.
you in the next months.
Great. That'll be wonderful, Joe. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
That was very, very much appreciated. Okay, Math DPI, Act 13863, would you take us into that?
Yep. Dan Paczynski is here as our 612 math coordinator. And I think Jody Landish might support the conversation, but this is an information item because it's new, it's upcoming, it'll have some ramifications throughout our system at every middle school as well as at every high school. We'll have to be looking back at what's happening with graduation, how do we get our credits, all of those things. There are some real pros in this, there are some real, maybe barriers for discussion, so we want to bring it forward tonight, see what kind of where we're at status-wise and where we could go. So Dan, welcome.
Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Dan Paczynski, the math coordinator for the secondary level. Really, we're just, like Ryan said, we're just bringing this for information to you. Last year, Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, really, they went through and they approved Act 138 and Act 63. So the documents in front of you really summarize those two things, and I just want to bring it up for conversation. So I'll summarize it, and then
Okay.
I'll take your questions.
Thank you.
First, let's tackle Act 138, which is probably one that's going to affect us most. What it is essentially doing, it now grants middle school students who are taking high school courses the opportunity to earn high school credit that goes towards their graduation. Currently, or before this, that wasn't allowed.
Right.
So students who were taking, for instance, algebra at the middle school, even though algebra is technically a high school course, they were just receiving elective credit. They couldn't get their credit that would count towards their 3 math course credits. So that's the major change that's going to happen. What DPI has done is they've laid out some things that we need to clarify as a school district and determine whether or not we want to go through and actually make this a policy for our district that we're going to follow. First thing is that students must show competency based on board-approved exams or even state testing scores. We get to decide that at the local level in terms of what we want to have our kids show,
Okay.
which is pretty empowering for us.
Yes.
The second thing is that the middle school teacher has to be a certified math teacher, as well as they have to be certified in the appropriate age range. And the third thing is that the course has to be taught with a curriculum that is very similar and or almost exact to the high school. So those 3 things, it was very well thought out. Those are the 3 questions that I would have brought up if they just would have said you can go ahead and do it. The earliest that this can be done is actually for next year. So our middle school kids this year in 2014-15 could actually get credit for next year at their high school. We don't have it locally approved as of right now, and right now we don't meet all those requirements. As I look forward to next year and project towards next year, all those requirements, if we decide to move forward with it, we'll have taken off or checked off our list in terms of meeting the requirements.
So then you have to have the right certification in middle school.
Correct. So I guess let's open up questions about Act 138.
Okay, well, in middle school, I mean, teachers historically had like 1-8. certification.
Correct.
But if they're gonna be teaching this, they're going to have like 612.
Yeah, if you flip to the next page, DPI, through their website, actually goes through that whole process right there in the third paragraph
Okay.
down.
Yep.
Essentially, what it says is, the way that the licensures used to be written, 1.8, 1.5, 1.9, a teacher who has a 1.9 license, because of that number 9 next to it, can teach a freshman level course, which is
Right.
spelled out right in here as just algebra. So therefore, that's where the line would be drawn for that teacher, and they couldn't teach geometry or further on
Right,
for our kids to get credit.
right.
Right now, as a system, we've analyzed all of our licenses and taken a look at all of our teachers who currently teach at our middle schools, and we have, out of all of our middle schools, 2 conflicts. And we've already reached out to principals and gotten their opinion in terms of whether they could remedy that issue, and in both cases, wouldn't be an issue. So our teachers are qualified with 400 license, the math license, and the vast majority already are certified for the correct age range.
So they have the certification already, wow.
So it's not a big move for us.
Yep. Mr. Baumgart?
Dan, in the first one, it refers to board-approved assessments. As this board doesn't really approve math tests.
That's a great
Yeah, you sure
point.
should, but-
And I wouldn't want any of you to have to do that.
So what
But,
does that mean?
that's what we get to decide. What I would recommend is that our current high schools all have final exams.
Right.
Algebra, geometry, all the way up. That could be one piece. If we wanted even to make it more strict, we could go to all of our common assessments that our teachers are giving across the district
Okay.
at those levels.
So really what this says is, for instance, our board could simply say, use the same ones you're using at the high school level.
Yep, that's exactly
Okay.
what we could do.
I wanted to be sure that was available.
But the tests, the final exams in the high school, they aren't standardized tests, they're teacher-made tests, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
But
Dr. Landry?
about 3 questions, so bear with me. To Bill's point, the algebra and geometry tests aren't going to help because you're trying to pre-qualify, and those wouldn't pre-qualify.
Can you explain
Well,
that more?
okay, I guess I read it, I think I read it right, but I thought it said to students who have essentially been deemed, ready to take those courses and not just what they did in the course, which would be an algebra or geometry test.
Yeah.
But they have already proven their merit that they can jump into one of those. I thought the language talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, the language is a little bit fishy there. I was able to talk to Diane Casbaum from DPI and try to
Yeah.
work that out. And really, we already go through a process of figuring out where kids should best fit in our curriculum or where they should fit.
But
So
it
that
hasn't been
kinda
a
takes care of that.
board-approved
No, and
process.
what she was saying is that you don't have to do, that's not the process that would need to be board approved. It's the exit. Did the student
It is
earn credit?
confusing.
That sure is, the way it's written.
Yeah, the way it's written. Okay, so that helps. And,
Okay.
and so we'll obviously talk about the exams as an exit, and I understand that. And you helped with the teacher credentials. But I have another question, because I looked at your flow chart, and that helps. And I know we've looked at some of those before for various curricular areas. If a student is extremely talented, according to what this year 1, year 2, they could be in algebra in 7th and in geometry in 8th. But if we're talking about a 1.9 certification, that won't work.
Right. Luckily for us, we only have one 1.9 license, and we
Okay.
have an overlap with a, what we call pre-adolescent, adolescent license, which is essentially middle school through high school at that
Okay,
site.
so then you
So
can do it.
even the 1.9 license, because those are being phased out more and more,
Okay.
that won't be an issue right now as it currently stands.
Okay.
So we've also talked to Christine Hedstrom and, praised her of the situation in terms of our hiring.
Sure.
We need to continue to look for teachers with a middle to high school license.
And just philosophically, so, obviously, we've all known some, Alan Turings, or, if you saw the movie Stephen Hawking's, or people like them. But I would think typically for a 7th grader to go into algebra and then take geometry in 8th grade, that's really pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
So
extraordinary.
we're talking about a very few.
A very few when you
people.
get to geometry.
Yeah.
But with the current programs that we have in our district, where we're allowing kids we're meeting kids at their readiness level.
Sure.
It's happening more and more often.
Okay,
And the one thing that excites me about this particular act is that it puts in place some checkpoints to make sure the rigor is equal to what we expect at the honors high school level. Because
Okay.
essentially, we want these students who are moving further faster to not only just be going through the curriculum at the pace that they can do, but also at the correct rigor as
Okay.
well. So that really does excite me.
okay, so we can do a Stephen Hawking here.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we maybe had graduated a few the past couple of years.
Well, I think my daughter knew one, yeah. And then as far as relating this to, because as I reread the language, and maybe I missed it, so if I did, it's not really talking about math. Well, it actually is, though. But how does this relate then to students who take advanced science or languages? I mean, I think those are things we've been looking at.
Yeah.
You know, if you take, you know, French one or, you know, whoever, Spanish.
This
in-
conversation has extended outside of the math conversation
Yeah.
to include Sharon Tebow, our world language coordinator.
Right,
She's her department, and she's still trying to wrap her head around what that's going to look like. So I
Okay.
think those two departments are going to be most affected by it at this point.
right.
And really, if we approve this, it would have to be approved probably for everything.
So when it comes back to us, it might be broader than the way it sits now.
Yeah, it could be. It
Okay.
could be. So,
That
and we
helps.
can update that and make sure you have that information.
Okay, thanks very much.
Mr. Baumgart?
I just want to be, I think I'm clear on this, but looking at your diagram, I think what we're saying is this is providing an additional opportunity or maybe an additional incentive for really the math enthusiast
Genius.
to graduate with about 6 credits in mathematics.
Yeah, they could graduate they could graduate with all those credits in math.
That's all the way across the board.
Yeah. The unique thing about this is that those kids that are really advanced are probably, it's not gonna be a matter of graduation. It's just a matter of getting them those credits,
Well,
and opening up new
They
opportunities.
won't have to go to Carroll College and take it, because
Right.
just not that many years ago, that
that's
was the
another good
case.
point.
That was
Youth
my
options.
question.
Go over to
Expensive.
Carroll to get
Options,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
well, if we teach, well, yeah, because we teach all these.
We do teach all these
Right.
courses.
We do.
We didn't used to, but we
So then are you saying, and thank you for saying youth options, so then we don't have to send kids to Carroll anymore or WCTC or whatever for advanced math? We can take care of it all under our roof in the district?
Youth options will always still be out there for an
Yes.
opportunity if we can't provide
Yes.
the same or alternative experience that's similar to one of these four
Yeah.
students. There's certainly more math beyond what's on this page and alternate subjects that we don't offer and that we're sometimes, or that right now we're even looking into possibly trying to offer in the future. But right now, there are some courses that could be an option for kids.
Do we have any students currently leaving our campus to get further math instruction?
There are
Your level?
there are a few take computer science courses outside the district. I can't
science.
speak to the number taking
Okay,
math.
but
I can't,
not math.
none that pop into my brain. I'd have to
Okay.
relook at those numbers.
Okay, but need be, we still would do that.
Yep.
Now, do we move middle school kids up to high school by buses, or can we take care of all their needs at the middle school now?
That's one of the topics that was brought up,
Okay,
is how do we, kids that are advanced and in the middle school,
yes,
how do we provide for the classes that they want to take at the middle school level? Because very much like special education, we would like to have them with their peers taking that
Sure.
course. Traditionally, in the past, anytime a student has gotten past algebra in the school district of Waukesha, we've bused them to the high
Yes, we
school to
have.
take that particular course. I don't think that's off the table. I think we need to look at individual cases in terms of where that is. But with programs like STEM is running, where they have kids essentially taking a continuum-based track, 6th through 8th grade,
yeah.
a lot of them are moving more quickly than taking it each year by year. So they're getting to further coursework earlier, and that's an exciting thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
Ms.
I
Vanacek.
just wanted to say, I didn't see the movie that you were speaking of, but my daughter's friend was just over and we were having this conversation and she was saying she would be the first, she's a freshman at South, she'd be the first female in 9 years to be able to, I wish I could remember the whole story. I was sitting here trying to think of it, but she's in either AP Physics or Calculus or something, and she's a freshman, and her mom's trying to help her to get all of her math done in high school that she would need in college. She could be doing all of that in high school and be getting credit for it, so she wouldn't have to pay for it in high school, or I mean in college. So, yeah, I don't,
But as Dan pointed out, there's still more courses in college, you know, beyond this. This is,
Depending on what you go into and the track that students want to go into.
yes, that's right.
One thing that we didn't hit on at all is at the very bottom of the DPI's recommendation for what they want to do is it talks about counting grade point for these courses or not. DPI has recommended that you do not count middle school grades towards high school graduation requirements.
Right.
I don't know the philosophy behind that, but it makes a whole lot of sense that we wouldn't hold a kid, they wouldn't hold a kid back with their GPA based on that. So that's another decision we'll have to bring up.
Yeah, yeah. Two sides to that argument.
Right? There's going to be a plus and there could be a minus.
Yep.
Brian, would you like to add something?
Just to, a little bit more on big picture. It was almost 2 years ago that Wisconsin DPI put out a document called Innovation in Wisconsin Schools, and the subtitle was titled Beyond Credit and Seat Time. And it was about 2 years ago. DPI is about a 100-page document, and it really didn't have it laid out of what was going to happen, but this is some of the initial rollout from that vision that DPI has put out there. And really, it's just beyond credit and seat time, which was that they're going to start to recognize more and more opportunities for if students have learned certain pieces or if they're learning at another source outside of being in a seat. And so I think we're going to continue to see issues like this come up. I think the next topic we'll probably be talking about some sort would be like the 4 years of English requirement, where some students are coming in at a mastery level already at what a junior or senior might do, but they're being in these courses. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, as well as more students that will get credit for being able to pass a competency exam because they've learned something someplace else. So the world in this is it's interesting. Wisconsin's following a team of other states that are trying some of these things. But the document itself, I can get a copy so it's next time. It's called Beyond Credits and Seat Time. It's Innovation in Wisconsin Schools, and it throws out some big questions, and it's looking at a lot of the policies, a lot of the requirements, and I think we're going to see more things like this that are going to have local control for conversations, like does a board want to adopt this, but it'll also kind of slowly keep putting things in front of us to talk about as we go, so.
Yes. I'm going to ask Mr. Baumgart a question. You're an engineer, correct?
What, yeah, I'm an engineer by degree.
Of course you are. Of course you are. When you went to engineering school, you took math beyond these things, right?
At that point, calculus was rarely taught in high school, so we took calculus and then we took differential equations after that.
But there's more.
That's as much as we had to take.
Okay. But there's more math courses, like if you get
There
a
you gotta
master's
start
in.
talking to people like my son has a major in math.
Yes,
Yeah, you take other courses. There's many more. I mean, you go into actuarial science, that's mathematics too, and stuff like that, so. Oh yeah, there's much more for them to learn.
thank you, Mr. Baumgart.
So I guess before we can move on, we do really need to bring up Act 63.
It's gonna be a trap.
Essentially, Act 63 now requires that every math student, every high school student, 3 credits of math to graduate.
Yes.
They all have to take 3 credits of math to graduate. It's affecting many other districts more than it'll affect us because we've already required that. But some additional things have been brought up because of this. When the state is requiring states to do it, how am I supposed to say this? Other courses can actually count towards math courses.
I was just
So-
gonna ask that. What about a kid that, like I probably was one, geometry was more than enough for me. I couldn't have gone, but if you have to have 3, what could the third one be for someone that's not, real adept at math? What could you take now?
Currently, if you look at the math flow chart, what our students can take to graduate would be algebra, an integrated geometry path, and a geometry. Those 3 items
3,
to
okay.
get them into graduation. That'd be I don't want to
Okay.
say quickest, but that's the bottom end of our requirements
Okay.
currently.
Okay. would be room for me.
Right.
Always room for me. All right, Dr. Langill.
Thank you. Yeah, again, thank you for doing this, and I just wondered if either you, Ryan, Jody, somebody knows, because these things are perhaps in quantifiable subjects, i.e. math, science,
Yes.
basically. And so you mentioned the humanities, and, you know, we don't offer this option for the humanities or even social science, you know, history and so forth. And I don't know if there's a discussion about doing that, and if so, how we would implement that, because we're topically oriented in those areas more than necessarily skill-oriented. But I think because I coordinate the National History Day, we see just top students that come to compete
Sure.
in that. And one of our students from National History Day in the southeastern region of Wisconsin got chosen nationally for a huge fellowship, and she's only, I think, a sophomore. She's going over to Normandy on a full ride
Wow.
because her unbelievable paper, research paper, she was in the paper, I don't know if anybody saw it, she was featured, you know, is just won a national award. And so she's got this full fellowship to go over to the beach in France and to the institute, you know, there and so forth. So, I mean, obviously, what we see in History Day are just the cream of the cream. But again, there's no program that I'm aware of for students who are that accelerated, other than an AP course or something, you know, to do this kind of thing. And I don't know how you institute it, but it's just a question I want to throw out there, because I think at some point that ought to be looked at.
And I know it is being looked at, and I think
good.
it's really going to come down to what are, can we define the level?
Yeah.
But we can in world language, or we know, well, you should be able to do this to be at Spanish 2, or you should be able to do this to show mastery for geometry. So it's just going to come down to that. But I mean, you ask, I know the high school principal are going, ask Jody, but we know students are coming in at levels and at competencies that you would say, well, it's 10th or 11th grade, or what the expectation would be and beyond. So I think we're going to see more of that happening, because there's talented students throughout our system in all different ways. And so I think we're going to see more of that.
Okay, so they're looking
Yeah,
at.
even music's been a conversation. You think about students that have played in MISO or done Suzuki since they were, you know,
Sure.
and they're coming in at a level that would say, well, do you really need a 9th grade? Or, I mean, you're
Sure.
up and performing at a level. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that as we go, to recognize outside learning or anywhere, anytime learning as something that builds your portfolio, that we're more signing off or more demonstration of that.
Amazing, just amazing. Okay, any other questions, comments, any further information you'd like to share with us, Dan?
Just a reminder, we're going to be coming back next month
Okay,
with a little bit of revised wording here to make sure it's solidified. I'll touch base
Okay.
with other courses to see where they're at, and hopefully look towards an action item.
okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jody. Thanks for being here this evening. Okay, our famous subject, grading for learning. Oh, excuse me. Yes,
Assessment.
yes, assessment change, even better, yes.
Try to keep this one as simple as we can, to understand the 14-15 school year assessments
This is
and,
not simple.
well, front page simple,
This is not
packet
simple.
detail. So Dina McCormick, who joined our district this year, has taken some time to put together detailed information about all the assessments. There's not a day you can go by without reading about our over-assessment, under-assessment, which assessment, what assessment. So this breaks down kind of what we have this year, as well as kind of a description of the information, kind of when the starting and testing might take place. And it would pose some other questions as to what are we using, what are we not using, where is it going? And so I'm going to turn over to Dina to be able to share some of those details and
Thank you
from
for
here.
being here tonight, Dina.
You are welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I on? Okay. So I'm going to go through this first and just look at, I asked Mary Jo to print this in color. I think you guys have it, so I can kind of talk about the color that's kind of a peach is our new tests. So we can go through that. So obviously the Badger 3.8 is new. That replaced the WKCE math, reading, and writing portions. ACT Aspire is a new test this year that replaced the Explore for 9th grade.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me to interrupt, but we really had some form of that, like the pre-ACT or the PS, or the, PSAT, right? Before. It just has a kind of a different name.
The Aspire is online. I don't know, I
But
don't
it's like
know
a
that the
pre-ACT.
PSAT is the same as Aspire. It's different. It's not used for the same, I mean, it's not the same test.
It's a different package. I know what you're saying. You're saying the old ACT package. What she's referencing is the new version for moving
Okay,
forward.
I understand it's a new version.
Okay.
But we've offered in the past, it used to be a lot of the, PSAT, which is the pre-SAT or the pre-ACT. So in a sense, this falls into that same genre, right?
Correct. It's
Yeah.
new name and new
Okay,
titles.
that's all I'm saying. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Dynamic learning maps, that's a new assessment this year. That's replacing the WAA for students with disabilities.
And to go back to the question earlier, in, the curriculum question, the old WAA test was the alternate standards that students used to work towards prior to this new assessment, the Smarter Balanced, and so on and so forth. The new Dynamic Learning Maps test aligns with the essential elements, which are the Common Core state standard equivalent of the old WAA standards. So that's where the assessment and curriculum piece comes in.
Thank you.
So the dynamic learning maps replace the math, reading, and writing for the WAA. That is now computer-based, where the other test was paper-based. Math Common Assessments was new this year. That's something that Rose Palmer and I worked together. She created a form of a common assessment for grades K through 5. It's more performance-based, so teachers can get an idea on how students are answering their math questions, so they know where they can create support. So that was also created this year. And the Explore test was eliminated in 14-15 for this year. So those are, I guess, the changes, what's new and the things that were replaced. I created this document just kind of honestly for myself to a point, just being new and making sure that I knew all the different assessments that we had. I had some of the new coordinators were saying, hey, what is here, what's come, what's not, what is this test for, how, just trying to really understand all the changes that have happened. So I found this kind of helpful, just a description, again, mandated. Is it by the state? Is it something we do at the district level? Some things are kind of optional. Dual language schools, we're working, there's not a perfect scenario for testing there, so some of the schools have the option of using the CPAA. So it kind of is all noted here on this document. There has been a change. With the Badger test, that being not adaptive, so those of you may have heard that, so on my notes, I have that to modify that, so this is not adaptive. That is the only change that I had since we created this, so.
Well, I counted, and it looks like there's 11 state tests, 9 district tests, for a total of 20 tests. Are you telling me that we are giving our students 20 tests a year?
No.
How many?
No, it depends on the grade level, and it depends on the student. So not every student would be taking what's noted in here, say the CPAA. So that would be for grades K through 2, just at dual language. So not every student would take that test. But this is a comprehensive look at all the different assessments that we have in the district.
So how many tests, would each grade level have, or is it hard for you to just
Well,
tell me?
MAP is K through 11, Badger's 3 through 8. I could come up with that. ACT obviously is just 9th grade, so that's not a test anyone else.
I guess I'd like to see by grade level.
Okay.
How many at K, how many at 1? I mean, this to me is so overwhelming. I had a parent call me and she said, do you realize that our students spend 23 hours a school year or 23 days, I should say, 23 days, within 23 days, they're getting tested. And I thought that was really, really a lot.
Is that the case?
That would be a little high, but it would depend. For example, there's a piece on here, running records. That's a part of just ongoing
I know that
instruction.
is,
So
yeah, I know
we
that
could
is.
count that as an assessment. The Gallup student poll, that's about a 30-minute assessment that's taken once a year of students of measuring sort of their well-being and hope, and it's kind of a piece that, so it's not really an assessment that takes place usually during an advisory. That's not a high-stakes thing. It's really, do you feel hopeful about?
And that's
yeah.
fifth grade. There's a select grades for
Yeah.
that, so it's not the entire.
Why
But-
so
but-
many?
Yeah, but definitely there is that conversation, and we actually have removed, I think Bob did some of the work last year, we removed about 3 or 4 assessments last year, and we've been trying to be as mindful as we can of what are they? What are they being used for?
Right.
The reason we have a couple new adoptions is because different teams, depending on different levels, have looked at, well, what's the best assessment for this age group? Are we assessing, using an assessment that doesn't even measure our students' abilities? So we've been doing that as well. And then the biggest question of all, which we'll be coming back with in about a month or two, is how well do we even know how we're performing on any of these
That's
assessments?
right.
And
That's
how
my
is it
next
affecting
question.
class? So we're putting together a district data dashboard. I think I previewed that a couple of months ago, and we have a preview that'll come with these in terms of what did where are we performing or in terms of each of these assessments, and what does that mean, or what's our overall trend? So we'll have a district storyline that goes with these, and we'll also have a building storyline that goes with these as well.
Because some of these tests, they do math and reading, and I'm thinking, well, how many math and reading assessments do we need at each grade level to really get results that are valuable?
That's the point, yeah.
Yeah?
And it does bring, and even the Badger exam conversation, which is getting pretty foggy as we go, has us question, well, if the Badger exam is going to do what it wants to do, where do we stand with our NWA MAP assessment, and how, but yet MAP was a much better tool than the WKCE, which would, or are we doing other things locally in our schools now that give us a better read of our performance? So it's a constant kind of ongoing piece.
Now, are these state things, Smarter Balance and Badger test planning? Are these states?
The Badger, right on the first page says Badger 3.8.
Yeah.
That's, Smarter Balance has been renamed the Badger exam.
Oh.
So, and we recently received an update from DPI that the Badger exam, which was supposed to be an adaptive test, which many of these is not going to be available in adaptive format this year. So we're looking at how that may play out here through the district. But it's also, this is replacing the WKCE, which was the number 2 pencil sharpened in circles, with a computer assessment, which is requiring us to double check all of our software and hardware and other pieces. So we're in a transition phase with that.
Oh, are we ever?
We are celebrating that we have used MAP for a while because we do feel like we know where students are at.
With
and-
MAP.
With MAP. And so it's a give and take. As the Badger exam continues to evolve or unfold or be adopted, we'll get to that next phase, which is, but MAP is happening right now. I know that we're still have an open window for the winter assessment. And across schools, really, that consists of, if you take MAP over the winter, it's about a 45-minute reading assessment and about a 45-minute math assessment. So in terms of days, if someone counsels says that's 2 days of testing, you could really say, well, it's really one class period for each of those 3 times a year. And some of the information is pretty timely. I know a lot of schools use it live that day. They get the score, they look at flexible grouping. So there is some value to it, but we need a storyline like that for every assessment we use, which is if there's a value add and a story piece and allows us to provide better instruction or to know what students need, it makes some sense. In other places it doesn't, and some of these costs have a cost to them.
Oh, I'm sure
as
they
well.
do. But Ryan, it's so interesting. We went from WKCE, I remember, which was the only test that we took. There was a state test. We really didn't do other district testing except teacher assessments, et cetera. And now we've got these 20 tests, and I'm thinking, are we in any better position, what we know about student learning, than we did before?
That's the question. I think we have reinforced what we know about students with the multiple assessments we're using. The real question we're trying to do is, what are we doing as a result of this data? Because it's easy to print out a binder, it's easy to
Well, right.
make a data wall.
Well,
What we're
right.
asking ourselves is what's changing instructionally, and we have some evidence of some really great practices happening across schools or across classrooms. My favorite piece of all of this is if you do dig in, there are a number of places in this district, and it's growing rapidly, where students clearly know their assessment results and are setting goals live to reach the next goals, and they kind of own this as, well, here's where I've scored, here's a strength of mine, here's an area of growth. They can actually break it down and set some goals. So in some ways, we're seeing it at a local level with students. At other ways, you're seeing teacher teams using this to flexibly group or actually step back and say, wow, our trend line has been up or our trend line has been down. Or they're even saying, year after year, our students aren't hitting this topic or this standard or this strand, and they're adjusting their instruction and thinking, well, we should probably be approaching how we're teaching this differently. So in some ways, we're getting some results like that, but we haven't gone as public maybe with
So are you
that.
saying that this is going to be tailored?
We have to continue to tailor it. We took some steps this year, took a couple of assessments off, replaced a couple of assessments that weren't really meeting our needs.
So it may very likely be less, not more.
Yeah, and I would hope that in any case, it becomes more meaningful each year and user-friendly and not something that's just, it's an assessment separate from daily instruction, or it's just we're testing for testing's sake or
I
things.
don't think I'd want to go to school if I had to take all these tests. Karen?
Thank you. Yes, as far as when parents call us, and just like they did with Barbara, if we can have something like K 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the tests, and then how many they're doing, so that we have a column at the end that says, this is how many tests per grade. So if someone calls us in 4th grade and says, my daughter's been, we can see what they've been doing. And then maybe if they were different colors, like if it's optional for our district, or if it's
Yeah,
mandatory,
if it's state or district.
then we know where we have flexibility, because on Barbara's last comment, if there's too many, kids are just gonna check out. Like, I remember just making Pac-Man with the little Scantron things. I mean, you just check out, it's just too much, and then is that useful at all?
Right.
So, yeah, I know you guys are trying to figure all that out, but
Karen, thank you for bringing that, because somebody had said to me, and it's a teacher, and I've heard this before, that some middle school kids, or some high school kids, they blow off the test and put, any old, they fill in any old circle, and it's not necessarily the right answer, and of course, we don't get an accurate measurement then. And if we do too much of that, that's definitely gonna happen.
With the MAP test, that's one of the benefits. If
Yeah.
the student goes too fast, it invalidates the test. So that's
Right.
something, again, that's nice with that MAP test, that it's valid that way, because it is adaptive. It's the one adaptive test that we do have.
Well, I would just like to, share, Brian gave me a very interesting, gave me a copy of Education Now, and the whole edition was focused on early childhood education, which is, my greatest interest. And they talked a lot about assessment in there, and they're saying, we do way too much assessment of little kids, and they particularly pointed out the MAPS testing was not the best thing in the world to be using on 5-year-old kids. And I talked to some teachers that are using it, and they say, example, if you don't mind my taking a minute and saying this. One of the questions was, there was fruit, on the picture, and they said, put the bananas in the bowl. Well, you know what the kids did? They put all the fruit in the bowl, because it's very hard for a 5-year-old to understand, some of those concepts. And so I'm really, really very, I need to be convinced that some of the testing we do with 5-year-olds, I question the appropriateness of it. So, just so you know, I have a bias there. And
Yeah, well, in the MAP test, I recommended that it wouldn't be used, especially possibly in the spring, just to get students used to that
Possibly in the
because of that reason. So
thank you.
and I think initially the thought was that we would do that. That was before PALS came out. Now we have another assessment that's more appropriate for that age group. So we've had conversations about maybe
Oh,
moving that
thank
out of
you.
the kindergarten.
Thank you for saying that, because I've heard from, teachers of young children, they're way too young for this, or to fill in the circle.
Right.
They
If
can't
they
do
even have the
that.
skills on the computer, that was the other thing. We need
Well,
to make
right,
sure they
right,
know how to do
Thank you,
that.
thank you so much.
We do have a, we do have a meeting that was scheduled like a couple weeks ago that had to be canceled that we had for with elementary teachers, in particular, K-5, to kind of go through what do we have to do as far as like what assessments do we have to give from
By
the state?
state?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then also what assessments do we need to do?
Okay.
And so also trying to figure out, so what can a state assessment or a mandated assessment or whatever, like PALS, what can it actually tell us? And are there things that maybe we can give up or lessen on because we can use the data that's given from there? So we have that, I think it's sometime this month, actually, I forget, on an evening. But just to get some information in a listening session, just to find out a little bit so we can help make sure that we are doing the right assessments.
If you would include that in the board packet, I would really like to listen. That would be very, very valuable for me, just to listen, just as a person interested in testing. Ryan, did you want to add something?
And just the kind of the third layer on this, so the first layer is what assessments we're using, and the next layer that we're developing and we'll be sharing is sort of how we've been performing with these assessments and what kind of data are we getting from these. The final phase is also tied to a conversation, which is the school rankings, the school report cards, the future of that. Schools are so we have, a number of students reaching readiness level for reading or growth scores.
Yes.
That's still, that's still a reality in our school. We're going into the third year of that. And we're also, teachers, we're able to look at individual schools, individual classrooms. So in terms of testing, we want to make sure we're using some of the right tools, because many of the conversations that we're having do play into educator effectiveness or school effectiveness or district
Sure.
effectiveness. And so
Absolutely.
while there's some end result of some of these scores, which comes out to a ranking, we're looking for those that are helping us be better predict that, better adjust as we're going through the school year, find some trends and really dig into that data. So there's kind of these three layers, which is one, what are we using? Two, how well have we been performing? And three is what is the ultimate there? But we have to be in that middle phase, so
Right.
where we're really taking that apart. So we'll be using the term, our district data dashboard, we'll be bringing that, we have drafts started, and we'll be bringing those forward. We'll have building dashboards, so you can really see what assessments are used in this building, what's the trend line been there, what can we expect for growth or achievement out of these spots.
Yes.
Yeah, what's that dashboard gonna look like? Are we talking like that, Wise Dash Local? You're gonna use
Yeah.
that? Because I know that we're jumping into that. We had a presentation on that at the technology committee.
We'll be using that if it's developed. We're not relying on it because there's a partnership, but that's different. I've been kind of saying, so you have a dashboard in your car and it gives you the basic information, how many miles we've driven, if our tire pressure is low and all that.
Right.
And it will have some of that storyline, but if we really need a deep diagnostic, we'll go plug it in and pay the $200 to get the deep dive. So we're counting on Wise Dash or the Wise Dash Local or some of the other software, Tableau, Dina has some familiarity with, really, which takes us to a more readily available data source. The dashboards we're using, and we're looking at a couple other similar districts, and what we're trying to do is really make it public. What assessments are we using crystal clear? What has our trend line of results been over the last 3 or 4 years, that we can get a big picture of that? So one will be a quicker glance, something we can refer to anytime we're talking about a subject, a school, or a topic, or a district. But the second version would be that deep dive where you can really click on and see individual grade levels, see assessments. So I don't know if Dina wants to add more about that piece, or we're good.
No, I think that's
I
good.
covered it?
Yep.
Okay.
You're just talking about query string.
Yeah.
The deeper if that, then this, then that, and then is gonna be the advanced dashboard.
Yep.
And we have no plan on using, what are we gonna use for that? We're gonna build it ourselves?
The initial dashboard?
No, the heavy-duty one.
The heavy-duty
Query
one,
string.
Steve, and we have a meeting actually Thursday to get more details, but Steve is leading that charge with Ally and working with partnership. I don't see us putting a lot of deep dive into building that ourselves. We're hoping that a source does that. But a lot of times your district data gets uploaded places, or you can
Yes.
have access to it, or why, so that whole place is playing out,
And we kinda wanna keep it separate from,
the world.
yes, okay.
I don't want you to think that I'm against assessment, because I think where we are in the history of education, we know more now about what students have learned, how students learn, than we ever did before. So that's valuable, but, how much is right? Dr. Langill?
thank you. I hope we're not, you don't think we're hypercritical, because this is all just coming at us, so.
Yeah, no,
Lots of questions here.
No, this is
All right, because I have
no
quite a few,
problem. No.
but I'll try to make them quick. I think when you do come back to us, the cost is gonna be something that we'd like to see.
Sure.
Because, you know, even SAT out of Princeton and ACT out of Iowa, University of Iowa, those are money-making organizations. I mean, it's not a nonprofit. And I know that it helps here that you put mandate by whom. But as I look at this, and I'm just gonna grab a couple, ideas here. The work keys, grade 11. Okay, now this sounds to me like somebody who maybe isn't gonna be taking the ACT, maybe isn't college-bound, but it's mandated by the state. But then I look down to a couple tests below that, anyway, it's called the Gallup Student Poll. We're gonna do that in grade 5 through 12 to measure their hope for the future. I have some problems with that, and so when you come back, why is it important to take the work keys, which sort of is what skills you might take if you don't go to college, it sounds like, and then grade 5, what their hopes are? And then, sorry, but then, as I look at, and I have all these markings, oh yeah, it seems to me, that, and again, I'm probably wrong on this, but check it out and let me know, that if we look at the MAP tests, the Ames Web, and the NAEP, can't we just choose one of those? Those seem to me that there's a
Yeah,
huge overlap.
They're very different. So the map is 3 times a year. Information is provided immediately the next day. That is a test that Ryan's speaking of, where students set their own goals. It's probably the most comprehensive, it's the most research-based, it's the only adaptive test that's out there. That gives information, math and reading from grades. If we wanted to do K through mostly 9, some selected 10 and 11th graders.
Okay, but we have it K through 11.
Right, some selected 10th and 11th graders. The na-
Demonstrate high levels of proficiency. They don't need to necessarily be map test in high school, but there are students that we're watching their growth as they're trying to make some gains in other pieces. We also have some schools that aren't doing the winter assessment in the middle because it hasn't been the best predictor. You can kind of tell, so they're using some end-to-end.
Okay, but that's a district mandate. Then we look at the state mandate, which almost looks like it's federal,
So
which
the
is the
NAEP
NAEP.
Yeah, the NAEP test is a little different. We don't get results for that test. We get that at a state level, so we don't get individual student results,
Why do it then?
because it's mandated, you know,
We get a
have
letter,
to,
we
right?
get a letter in the mail come fall with usually a selected 3 or 4 sites that are asked to do the NAEP assessment.
Okay.
I don't know who it was this year,
Yeah.
the lucky winners were this year. But it does come in each year, and we sort of email the principals and give the
Yeah.
assessment.
We don't know, and it's a select, not only schools, but it's a sample of their population, so it's not even the entire grade.
Okay, and
so
then we
NAEP
look at
is-
the Ames, which is just our district, like
Ames-
map.
Ames Web, I don't
Yeah.
know, Joe, do you want to speak a little bit to the Ames Web? It's,
Ames Web is a screening and progress monitoring tool essentially used for those students who are in an intervention process, kids who are a little bit behind in reading, mathematics, also students who are being referred for learning disabilities would
Okay,
be using this
so-
as a progress monitoring. So it would be a select population of students, it
All
wouldn't be
right,
an
so
entire
if it
grade
says
level.
students in PK through 12, we mean select, a small select group.
Correct.
Okay, that helps.
yep,
Out of class and they take a test, or how do you?
Most of, we're talking about students that are receiving additional reading support or in an intervention, term or a different block. So using that as progress monitoring is a term we use to see, actually, is this additional course or additional support working? And so we are able to use that assessment's more frequent. It's happening really just to progress monitor, is the intervention that we're providing working, are students making the gains that we are anticipating them making by providing this extra service to them, or the additional instructional time or the instructional approach.
All right, second to last question/comment is going back to that Gallup student poll, which is just district mandated. And, I mean, I know, I don't mean to mock it because I kind of am, so forgive me, but measure student hope in 5th grade for the future. I mean, I have a problem with that, and I just wonder how much that costs and why we really think that that's necessary if we're already asking them to take even like this work keys test. I mean, I have problems with that Gallup student poll, and then I have one other question after that.
Okay, so the Gallup student poll is free. We don't pay for that.
Okay.
It's the one measure that we have for student engagement that we've used, I don't know, Ryan, how many, it's been 5 years or
It's
so,
about
I think.
4 or
that we
5 years
have-
ago
we
that
have
came
data
in
on.
to look, only ask one grade level at a time, takes about 20 minutes.
I don't think it's even 20 minutes.
And
I
it-
think it's about 10.
10.
It's a quick, yeah.
And Gallup
We just measure
claims
their
it has a
brief
better,
hopes.
Gallup claims that measuring, with their data, that measuring student hope and well-being is a better predictor of college success than, I think they put it up against ACT. They said it was a better predictor at 5th grade regarding this, and I don't know where all the detail was. We have some information we could bring on it. You can do, the questions are very simple. It's about, it comes across as, for students, like, climbing a rung of a ladder and where would you go?
Right.
Trusting, do you have trust in school?
Teachers,
Do you
right.
feel like, it really tries to get at a couple of those things, and it gives you kind of an equivalent score. I think the top score is a 5, and so you end up, schools are coming in like,
When you have a lot of hope?
if you have a lot of hope, it's
I hope
it's
you're
a 5, and schools are coming in at 4 and kind of watching it, and then it does have a follow-up. You know, other things that you can do as a learning environment to help students have hope. Do they see pathways to success in your school? So it comes with kind of follow-up reflective questions. We don't put a whole lot of time into it, to be honest. In terms of the assessment, it goes quick, it's 1 grade level, but the reflective questions that come after it do offer schools to look at are there pathways for learners? Are they feeling less hope
So
already
you
in the
say
system?
1 grade level, but it says 5 through 12, but you're saying we only do it
We
one
only
grade
use
5th grade at the elementary, and I think it is 6 through 8. I think it's all middle.
6 through
right.
8, 5, 6, 7, 8.
level? Oh, okay,
Once
so
a year,
not
10
5
minutes.
through 12, 5 through 8.
Responses, or do you get individual responses?
No, and no individual responses, so you would get an, by
Aggregate.
grade level, right? And the interesting thing is, we've been able to kind of set that next to the achievement scores to see if there is any correlation between the hope scores and what we're seeing in trends
Did you
of
say
grade
there's no
levels.
individual feedback on the Gallup?
No, it comes back in an aggregate, so you'd see by grade level, by
How can
school.
you use it for an individual student's prediction of how they're gonna do in college?
The measurement of this, I think the environment of the school is better than anything else.
Oh, that doesn't, I'm
we
sorry, but that
engaging?
doesn't seem very valuable, but maybe
I'm not
it is.
saying
I
it
mean,
is.
if it were individually and you could sit with a parent and say, you
I
know,
was heading off the question about whether or not.
I know.
Getting too personal.
It does fall in our attempt to start, the attempt, I think 6 years ago, was to continue to look at the engagement of learners, and we looked at everything from attendance rates to work completion to hope and engagement. So that it came in as a part of that conversation. And I'd say we're continuing to play in that field. It's sort of like also trying to find other assessments that measure students' life skills, or everything from work completion to communication skills or
But not
collaboration skills.
individually.
Yeah, the Gallup one right now does not provide an individual framework. It kind of collects as a whole, but then it provides, and that's kind of the point that we were at in the first, a few years back, which was what are some of those indicators that schools could look at? And I've even thought about student perception. Some schools do perception polls on students about, do they perceive that they have a successful path in the school? Do they perceive that they can accomplish or meet their problems in math class? Or, do they perceive that there's somebody in the building who has their best interest in mind, or other things? There's some of the local conversations that I think some of our schools are using to get at really connectedness to learners.
Okay, so in the Gallup student poll is a formative assessment that measures student hope. We really aren't measuring each individual student's hope. It's all just one batch and it's not individualized.
It's an anonymous survey in order
Okay, well, I
to
think we
make it
need to
that way.
put that in, because it sounds like, at least the way it's written, that we will understand each student's hope.
Got it.
It isn't, okay.
Yep, I see.
Last point, and I do apologize for this, but I think all of us on the board have been concerned, I certainly am continuing to be concerned, about our lack of funding for counselors at every grade level. I mean, and that's not your fault, I'm not saying that, but,
I'm good.
but in this district, we have virtually no counselors. So we get feedback, from these tests, and, parents might say, well, okay, my student just took these 5 tests. What does it mean? Don't we have about 1 or 2 counselors for all of our grade schools? And then in high school, I know my daughter, and this was even before the cuts, got a college counselor visit that was about 15 minutes long. They looked at her ACTs. Oh, okay, well, then this looks good for you, and okay, I'm out of time. Bye, the next student's gonna come in. That was it. So if we're doing all these tests, which I don't dispute, some of them look really valuable, how are we then translating it into meaningful results for families? Because I don't know, with the few counselors we have in this district, how in the world is that possible? I don't see that it is.
We do have, at the elementary level, we do have one counselor overseeing the counseling curriculum at the elementary level. However, our elementary schools are staffed with psychologists and social workers
Not
that have
too
helped,
many.
fill that void. They're sitting, they are part-time in those schools, but the school does have a person in the school on a daily basis to be available and work with kids.
Can you give us the ratio? Isn't it, I understand it's about 600 to 1
For counselors or for staff, and
for anybody that might be able to sit down with a family.
I could definitely provide that
Okay.
to you in the future.
I mean, I think if we're doing all this testing, then the question I have is, where does it go? What does it mean for the families? I mean,
At the
probably don't
middle
know.
schools, we do have 2 counselors at our middle schools, and then at the high schools, we have 3 counselors at each school. I do not have a comparison across what would be Waukesha County, what would be our neighboring districts, or even.
Cut and cut and cut, and you know that too, but, so, sorry, that's my last concern.
I have one more comment. You know, we're very, very protective of instructional time. And we've been so protective of instructional time that we've, in many schools, eliminated recess, okay? But we're taking that instructional time and devoting it to testing that I guess I don't feel that that's as valuable. Karen?
Thank you. Okay, this might open up something, but this is the place to do it. I was talking with Dee the other day in a meeting, and we were talking about the tests that our bilingual kids take, and that those tests are not, they're not accurate. Like, let's say, Dee, what was an example?
Well, the tests aren't accurate always of what a student can do cognitively. So when a student takes an assessment in English, it's always an assessment of language and of content, and that's what we were discussing. So we have some pieces in our assessment calendar that provide a support for students to be able to show what they can do
Mike?
cognitively. Thank you. Can you hear me?
STAR would be one, or?
The CPAA would be one. It's a demonstration. Students have opportunity to demonstrate what they're able to do with language and content in a language that is not a barrier for them. So they have an assessment that represents the language of their instruction, and this goes for all dual language learners, including native English speakers who are learning through the Spanish language. And they take that assessment for reading and for math. It is a companion to PALS, and it's a companion to our fabulous network of reading running records, which are very diagnostic of what students can do in literacy.
So I thought you were saying, so, like, as an example, it would say, our test would say, solve this equation, and then they could do it in their native way, but they couldn't do it or something like that.
But it depends. So
How did you
most,
describe it?
most newcomer English language learners have 1 year before they have to take the same high-stakes assessment as all other students. And 1 year is simply not enough time to acquire English at a level of proficiency that would allow a student to be able to demonstrate what they can do through that language. And so there are some states, very few states, that do offer companion assessment for students that removes that barrier. So the assessment is truly an assessment of what the child can do and not simply an assessment of language.
So that child might be able to do that if they could just read the question. If it was in their native language, they would be able to probably ace the test. But because the test is given in English and they're not, not efficient, what is it? Fluent, thank you, in English yet, it's showing that they don't know how to do that. But they do, they just can't read it yet. And I said, well, that just seems so simple. Can't we just give them a different test? And she was saying that our state doesn't or something. And there's a group of us going to Madison anyway. So if all of this testing needs to be put on the table, I guess I want to know what we need to do.
I would say that there's a lot of promise, and I hope that Bob is in agreement. There's a lot of promise in what would be the opportunity for classroom-based assessments based on standards that would not remove the burden of language acquisition, but would include opportunities for students to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways, and some common and clear criteria across departments in all of our schools. I think that's the old-fashioned way.
So I threw the example of math out there, but it could have been anything. And it shows that we're getting bad feedback or bad reports that these kids aren't learning or they don't know anything, but they do. It's just that the tests aren't in their language. I'm like, isn't that just something that could be solved? And we would have a much better assessment of where they are and where they need to be. So I know we're talking about tests and assessments, and I don't know where that one fits in, but what can we do?
Yeah, well, if we look at the assessment framework, there is in some of the descriptions, you'll see that some of the assessments are provided for example, the STAR assessment was selected because it has a Spanish version, where our current NWA MAP assessment does not. It's coming soon.
It
but-
actually is.
Oh, it just started. Good.
Literally this week.
So
It just
maybe we'll
came
see
out.
STAR go away, or we'll, some of those other pieces, or some of those pieces. But definitely what you're bringing up is, do learners in our system have abilities that sometimes are masked by the assessment, whether it's they don't know how to understand the language, or as we were talking about in kindergarten, did they understand the language in and of itself, but they could do the problem? We see that at a young age. We see it with the students learning English, and we also see even just test error. Do they have even a computer piece? One of the biggest pieces, what's the testing error going to be on a computer assessment if a kid doesn't know how to use a mouse? So we have a variety of those things, but I think Dee and her team have been pretty passionate with advocating for that and looking at what assessments work, and then been also trying to be cautious about that so that we're not testing and then retesting or testing again. What assessments can we use? So I think this system's getting better at it, but it is a thing we have to be very mindful of so that learners can show their talents and abilities.
Yes, Dr. Lang.
Thank you. Dina, I hope you don't mind coming back in front of us. I hope you don't
No,
feel like we
absolutely.
put you
No,
on the rack
I feel
tonight.
like I have a better understanding of what
Okay.
you all want to see, so I can put
Great.
that together that way. That's
Okay,
no-
oh,
yeah.
good. I'm glad you didn't feel like you were just tortured.
And if we don't mind, I'd love to bring, we did this year's, and we talked, we could bring a couple of other artifacts. We have a testing calendar, so you can really see it at a year at a glance of when things are taking place.
Great,
We
that'd
could
be
show
great.
some
Yep,
previous
that'd
year's work, because I think we've stripped it from some things this year.
Great.
Because, you want to talk about it, making waves, when you put the testing or assessment calendar out to classroom teachers, and they see that, that's the arm in the air moment, which is, okay, so how am I going to do the
Yeah.
primary role that I'm doing when this
Yep.
is in here?
Yep.
But we do have some areas where running record is a great example. Was running record a district assessment that was calendared, or was it just about good practice that we should have been doing? So we've had some of those good conversations and found some highlighted areas that now it's not seen as that, it's part of our daily work, but we have other areas that it's like, well, okay, stop the stop the
Well,
train.
Brian, thank you for agendizing it, because I think it's brought up some really, really important conversations between Dina and ourselves, and if we have some questions, I can imagine that parents do too, so thank you very much.
We have to thank Dina, we're glad she's here.
Oh,
'cause This
yes.
is,
Oh, yes.
Thanks.
Thanks,
you.
Dina.
Thank you.
Anything else from any of you from Dina? Okay, thank you, Dina. Thank you very much. Well, now comes our monthly
The grand
discussion.
finale, huh?
Grading for learning.
Oh, boy, yeah, you're right.
all right. Well, probably most importantly is it's the new name. Could say a new name will confuse everybody, maybe a new acronym will keep people off the scent. But technically, the Grading for Learning conversation, as we all know, it is a valuable conversation for our system to be having.
That's right.
At the same time, as we all know, it needed some work. And so my favorite example happened just 2 weeks ago at the one conference. A principal from Appleton East High School was down to attend and see what was happening. He was talking about our work that was happening with our grading for learning and I was talking to him about work that we were doing, and basically it came down to his statement, which was, well, that's great. I'm just trying to stop our school from giving 15 points for turning in permission slips. And I said, that's a great reminder for where we're at, because 7 or 8 years ago, we were in a system that we had a point collection system of assessments and points. We had extra credit. We had different things that came in that didn't necessarily, not always, but didn't necessarily indicate a student or measure a student's what they learned or what they were able to do at the end of a course. So with that as a great reminder, we've come so far as a system in talking about what is the foundation of this work. And in the little house diagram on page 2, we talked really with simply the foundation of this work. And again, foundations always need reinforcing or waterproofing. But the foundation was just, this work was set on us clearly defining what we wanted students to know and be able to do in courses. And that just, if you go to classes across the district now, you see I can statements for every lesson, you see clear targets for students, and we're excited about what's happened there. You also see rubrics, and the conversation of what is quality for this course has really been outlined and defined throughout every course. It's taken some time, and there's still work to do with sharing of those rubrics, developing of those rubrics, but really just what is it that the standard is, or what does quality look like, so learners kind of know what to strive for. Another foundational piece was designing assessments that weren't just about gathering points and got-yous, but really assessment as students seeing that that was a part of the learning process, and the feedback from assessment was a helpful piece. So it wasn't always a punishable piece, but it was a part of the learning process. And last but not least, we just would call that it's been based on good practice. The Danielson framework, or effective educator practices for hundreds of years before us, and 100 of years after this point right now, are just about, good teaching and learning have always been combined with good assessment practices. So we didn't want to mess with that because there's been so much hard work on that. But we did have some leaky roofs and some walls that needed fixing. So the foundation we didn't want to go down with the ship in the conversation, but definitely when it came to, we had some leaky roofs, and I use this term a lot, but I owned a house one time, and one day it was raining in my kitchen. And my kitchen was on the first floor, so I had to figure out, there was a hole in my roof, the water went down a rafter and across the floorboard and down through the kitchen light. It was raining in my kitchen. In so many ways, shapes, or form, it's raining on board members' inboxes or Todd Gray's office when it came to grading for learning. And really what was happening was, for whatever reason, the conversations that have always existed about a final mark or a grade or a GPA was making its way from teacher and parent conversations to principal conversations to coordinator conversations to board level conversations. And really one of the biggest pieces that we had to step back and look at was, why was the system responding in that way? And one of the biggest pieces and one of the pillars we put on here was just professional judgment. It's one of the frames that unfortunately got lost in this, which is our system was operating out of rules and decoder rings and conversions that didn't necessarily make sense, and that we had too many exceptions for, so that we just couldn't live in a world of rules. Since that time, we've looked at what are these frames we're living within, and can we move from rules to guidelines? Could we put together some of the good ideas about grading for learning, but combine it with the needs of the Waukesha community, from our parents to our students to our teachers and to our schools? So our new name really is Waukesha for Learning, which is tried to represent a big vision that we think makes some sense about assessing students, what they're known able to do, and giving them a grade or a mark or a score that represents that, but also having a customized fit with Waukesha School District. So we've been at every school, face-to-face with really every teaching team over the last month, asking, with this model, how does the foundation been working for you? And we hear a lot of great stories and successes of that, but what are the frames and what kind of adjustments do we need? And we've gotten great feedback along the way. Some quick wins that Jody, Bob, and Jason are going to talk about. Quick wins at the elementary level, some quick wins that we could do at the high school that we've already put in place. But at the same time, we've looked at what are some other long-term goals that we need to take place. So here's kind of flipping around here. So feedback from the listening sessions. I will turn this over to Bob and Jody, but there's probably nothing. I think more than anything, the listening sessions I think did one thing, and the new name is doing the one thing that we want it to do, which was at any point in time, whether it's with iPads, whether it's grading for learning, if we're doing something in hopes of improving achievement or trying to do something as an initiative or whatever we would call it in our district, we want to follow good research and good ideas, but we want to make sure that we're working with our local community, our teachers, our parents, and kids and families to have it make the most sense and be a custom fit. And people have said it best in some of these listening sessions, like, we got it, we saw where it was going, but the pendulum went way too far, or we didn't have a chance to, make sense of it, or why isn't it just here and we went so far down there? So got some great feedback and great messages, but I will turn it over to who's ever first. Rock, paper, scissors. I think elementary's on the left, so.
I can go first. We had really good informational sessions with everybody. People were very open, willing to talk, and a lot of it was about refinement and ways of getting information out. So frameworks for communication from principals and teachers, things that we can quickly put out so that when we send home report cards or reports, or we get towards that time of the year, it can be email blasts, just explaining how students are assessed along a continuum of learning, especially in the elementary piece. Working with teachers on clarifying how grades are reported, and working again, for me at least, and a lot of the understanding was a desire to work off of a continuum of learning and helping kind of reframe that. Common rubrics and assessments, as always, continuing to develop those while they do exist. And they are out there for math and literacy and science in particular in those areas. Just continuing to come around those and making sure people have access, they know where they are, they know how to use them. Then also just kind of even simplifying them and allow some editing or some processing to really make it fit your buildings. Infinite Campus came up in many different lenses, just as it was new. Having gone through an Infinite Campus implementation about 9 years ago, there was, for at least in my world, there was no good way to go about it. It came, and you had to kind of figure it out. But trying to figure out how it really fits our elementary world, and how can we make it report out to parents the way that teachers feel is most beneficial? So I think a big piece of it is the question I would walk away with, is Infinite Campus, after the first trimester or the second trimester, is it giving parents the information that teachers are trying to convey to them? And that's something we have to kind of come around. And then also just more professional learning opportunities around grading and reporting and how this can look. And again, I tie that back to a continuum. Waukesha School District had a continuum of learning for a long time, and then I would say maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago, at least in the things I can pull, switched to a real standards-based framework instead of a learner continuum. So it went to, in second grade, you do these things, as opposed to in second grade, you could fall within this range. And so there is really a desire and a need, and we are in the process of a shift to try to get back to that continuum piece of learning, which will help with some of the communication pieces as well, too.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
As I look up here and I see secondary homework, I don't see homework under elementary. Why isn't that there?
It wasn't something that came up in
But
conversations
it
with
came
teachers.
up in our discussions. You're just talking about what the parents told you.
No, we are talking about all the elementary buildings, what the teachers
Okay.
reported out to us. So these were conversations with all the elementary teachers.
Oh, okay, because I know when parents have been involved, that's been a hot button issue, is homework counting or not counting, or, all of that. So I was just surprised not to see it.
It's just from my side, it hasn't come up as much in the elementary piece as far as having homework be a part of the overall process, because students are graded towards targets as opposed to having it count towards a letter grade or.
I know that, and that was really a hot button even 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, still
You
can,
know.
some of the early, we do know it's an issue.
Yeah.
Because it's about learners' habits. Secondary, loud and clear, and they got some pieces that we're gonna talk about. Elementary, though, we've even asked it a couple times. It doesn't mean it's not there. We think it's there in some way, shape, or form. But for the most part, a lot of the elementary teachers responded with, they'll still kind of do what is kind of assigned at this point. But it doesn't, students are still doing it because it's a part of the culture, and they're not really getting into playing the game of what it is or isn't. But teachers have said that they're being more creative with their homework. They're recognizing how it's opening doors to new pieces. But again, no matter the case, if it's brought up, we are providing a guideline that teachers can do more with it than just sort of. Before, it was sort of like you can't count anything, and that sort of had people throw their hands up, and it had parents throw their hands up, and
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
think Jody's really going to dive into that. But that was part of the that was part of the challenge that we got, which was if we went pure with homework as practice and homework as an opportunity to get feedback and not counted in a final grade, we really found ourselves in some ways where students didn't have some of the motivation behind that, didn't see the thinking behind it, didn't understand, and next thing you know, they weren't learning, and the next thing you know, they weren't scoring as well in assessment, and the next thing you know, it was this cycle that we had to get out of, which is really where we started to take away those rules and try to go to guidelines, because there was just too many scenarios where we needed to have some flexibility. As students started to, I mean, that's a learning process to learn about how homework and practice relates to an outcome, and we needed to have a tighter tie to that piece.
And so that will be put back in the mix, even if it isn't up here. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, yes, I guess I'm not as clear as where you're coming from, because I'm
Well,
not.
I guess I'm coming from a sense of hearing from lots and lots of parents, when we first put this in, because their perception was, and I'm talking elementary now, not secondary, much more elementary, oh, well, homework doesn't count anymore. And that was their perception, which seemed to be fairly accurate, actually. So you're not hearing that, but I guess going from what a lot of us heard, I'm surprised not to see it somewhere,
I
because
think-
we look at this.
We want, and if we'll follow up again on this, but we want that, there's a lot of great urban myths and legends around this, about you can't get a 4 at this school, but you could get a 4 here. Homework doesn't count, it does count, we can't even assign it, or we can. You can't use a multiple choice test at this high school, but you can at this one. There was a lot of that. So without a doubt, I would passionately agree. We want the conversation and the value of homework being a part of our schools. And if grading for learning in any way, shape, or form is getting in the way of students doing that, teachers assigning it and having it be part of it, we'll address that with enthusiasm, because we want and need students to understand the value of practice and homework.
So it will be back in the mix.
Yes.
And I guess in that perspective, it did come up as far as like how we communicate life skills and employability skills, or whatever range we
Yeah.
want to call it. So in that piece, I was thinking in a different lens, so I apologize for that. But that did come up as far as conversations, how do we report on those things, the behaviors of learning as opposed to the actual learning itself, so.
This feedback is just, there's no parents involved in this.
Not this one.
No.
The Infinite Campus gradebook, how's that working? I was under the impression we were doing a lot of work to make it work better. No reason why that impression, because I was told that my last time.
Infinite Campus took a serious beating. Yes.
Work is continuing.
Yeah, so we have a series of meetings starting this week titled Waukesha for Learning, or Grading for Learning, and Infinite Campus Compatibility Design Sessions, because it had a life of its own during these sessions. And how could we have predicted before Infinite Campus what some of these challenges were? But definitely right now, and it is the triple conversion. Now, Infinite Campus is, in theory, has claimed it can do whatever we need it to do, or whatever we design it to do. But Steve Schulman, leading this charge and this design work with us, has said, but I can't have it do everything for everyone throughout our system. So basically, our work is we're going to gather as a group, have representatives from every building and every team, make our list of initial changes that we need to have, get that out to teachers. They just address the first series or the round of problems and get some of those pieces in. And it was intended, Bob mentioned, the adoption. I do know when Infinite Campus came in, there was sort of that thing like just getting it in the system and getting kids in the system was going to be priority 1. But it has forced priority 2 in a hurry, especially at this first time that these grades came out. Teachers basically overrode whatever it said with, well, okay, it says this, but I really saw that. And, overriding a system, then it's kind of like, well, then why do we have a system if we're not?
Well, is Infinite Campus a district grade book?
Infinite Campus is our entire system, which goes everything from attendance to lunch, but it's the most current version of our grade book where kids can look up. And there's some conversion issues where students can look at it and think they're at this level, but it's really at this level or this level. It's a mess, and we're gonna get it.
Quote, it's a mess.
They made both lists.
Secondary.
Yeah, okay, and I just want to add that the communication piece is hugely tied into Infinite Campus. So I really believe a lot of the parent feedback that I am receiving is because there is a lack of clarity or user-friendliness to the portal system. That's what we're hearing loud and clear. And so We have sort of this chart that we're working off of in terms of parent feedback and teacher feedback in terms of making that, I'm sure Steve gave you that update, Pat. And so we're just going to work off one document and see, can this be done internally? Do we have to go to the system and get this done? And we're just going line item by line item. So that's our work in the month ahead. So I'll just speak to secondary. You know, in my transition here, I've been able to hit 8 secondary schools and 3 elementaries within the past 12 days. So it's been a wild and furious tour, but it's really been pretty exhilarating for me as a leader to hear the feedback from our teaching staff. They really echoed the sentiments of the house, and the visual was really appealing to them because they were able to celebrate the foundations of Waukesha for learning, which I think sometimes, as Ryan mentioned, in our district we take for granted. We have really clear standards and learning targets for kids and clear progressions about how to get there. And so the teachers were in agreement that we need to celebrate that. Some of the frames are absolutely leaky or made of straw, and so we were hearing loud and clear the same patterns really from parent constituency as well as teachers. And so we're able to make a quick wins document, we called it, after all the information came in from the secondary sites. And we said, what could we do right now immediately to the start of second semester to sort of ease up and make some instant changes, knowing that there's going to be some work in the months ahead too that we're going to start for the fall. So 2 things I want to highlight off of that list that really highlight for all secondary teachers what they were able to implement immediately. The homework piece and the flexibility around the formative and summative ranges of work was an immediate quick win that we put into place that allowed teachers, again, the professional judgment to use the range of 100-0, meaning 100% counting as summative, 0% formative, all the way to the range of 80% summative, 20% formative. So the practice, the homework, whatever that might entail. I think it's important for the board to know that some teachers say that 100-0 is working for them in their classrooms. And so again, to make an absolute and a hard and fast rule for all teachers and all kids, we know does not work. Okay, so we wanted to open up the flexibility to say if it's not working for your students, if you're not seeing either the motivation, the work completion, whatever, we're allowing you that professional judgment to be able to flex to see what will work for your students. So I'm actually anxious to see what our numbers are. I've talked to Allie and said how many were able to make the switch at semester. I think an even more important indicator, though, will be what change really happens in the fall, because we do understand there's year-long courses. There were perhaps some implications and teachers fearful of what this change might be for kids and communicating that. So they might have had some interest in going 80-20, but thought, I'm going to wait till the fall. Some were able to adapt and make those immediate changes with communicating to parents and students. So that flexibility piece in that was number one. And the second thing we did right away for the secondary teachers was put some, again, flexibility into the advanced placement courses. We're hearing loud and clear that AP advanced placement is a beast in and of itself, and we're really tied in a lot of ways to those College Board and rigorous requirements. I'll take English 11, for example, that would use a 9-point scale for a rubric. And so, you know, here's a DBQ and a 9-point scale that a teacher's grading them on simply because that's the College Board wants them to grade on, and somehow they're supposed to fit that into a 4-3-2-1. And so we have just said, look, you're following the rigors of the College Board, heading towards the AP exam, et cetera. We want you to be able to follow those guidelines with sort of those multiple choice percentages, as well as the rubrics for the College Board. Do what works in your setting. And so sort of a deep sigh, thank you for honoring the, you know, professional autonomy and judgment, and went from there. So those were our 2 quick wins at the secondary level. Again, knowing the communication and infinite campus piece is really the missing piece that we will look forward to digging into the next several months, so that it can provide more clarity for the parent and the student in terms of reporting out the learning.
Jody, what about departmental rubrics rather than each individual teacher writing his or her own rubrics? That's a big, big deal.
Right, that was loud and clear also, both at, that transcended secondary. That was K-12. And what I think I'm learning is that it's a matter of putting it all in one spot.
Yes.
We are doing a better job collaborating as a system and working together rather than having, the kindergarten teachers at Hillcrest creating assessments over here and some of you doing this.
Yes.
But what we need to do a better job of is warehousing that access so that every, again, kindergarten teacher that comes into our district has that accessibility and they're not recreating the wheel. So it's part of our job as a CNI team to be able to warehouse that in a system.
That's
So,
phenomenal, Jody, because, Bob has had some grade level meetings, and I think there's more to come. And one of the things that I've heard is teachers saying, I'm spending all my time at night writing rubrics instead of planning my lesson for the next day. Well, I'd rather have them planning their lessons for the next day than writing rubrics.
yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but.
But what we've learned too is we have to have both spectrums. We want to make sure people have the ability to adjust the rubrics to meet the needs of their kids. But for those that aren't ready or comfortable to be able to do that or don't, or we try to give them a framework to go within. So, if for in writing, for example, we have rubrics that are accessible for all grade levels K-8, and in math the same as well. But we don't necessarily have some of the in-house built ones that people are designing because this is where our kids are at right now. So it's trying to make sure they have both, but as Jody kind of said, in a clean way. And right now, some things kind of pile on top of each other, and that's a management for us just to kind of clean that warehouse out.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised to hear that there's been this much diversity in creating rubrics, because we've been talking about a uniformity across our school district at all grades, that we ought to be teaching the same point at every one of our elementary schools that are across the third grade or whatever it is. So everybody is getting at least the same amount. And I'm a little bit amazed that we are still in a mode where we're having individual rubrics created by individual teachers at individual schools, because that is very contrary to what this board has talked about in the past about a uniformity across the grade levels across the district. That's disturbing.
And it kind of was, I think, for all of us as well, because we have tools that allow shared folders, shared documents, that it does make your life easier to work with 6 people on, if you're all teaching the same things.
Yeah.
Sometimes we marvel at, between a 1-foot wall between classrooms, there's 2 teachers teaching the same course, both working very hard to create. Creation takes time, and then if you don't get a time to talk about it. So I think in some areas, there's very little collaboration, and I think in other areas, there's high levels of collaboration, and we have to keep pushing sort of that expectation and asking those questions. I met with a teacher last week, and I asked, have you been working with this person? And the answer was no. It was a new person to our system, but it was, how do we not only bring people in, but how do we network them to say, you shouldn't go home and build this, and
Yeah,
it's still happening,
and
unfortunately.
I'd have to say, there is a certain responsibility among the teachers to share. And if they don't, and they're writing their own rubrics, some of that's their own fault, because they're out there if they go looking for them, and it's a business. It's sharing the best ideas, that kind of thing.
You're right, Bill, you're absolutely right, I agree with you. This was a very, very valuable piece, that you asked them, and they honestly responded. And that communication may make the biggest move in Waukesha for learning that we've ever had.
I like the new name.
As long as that's not all it is.
No, well, it can't be, and I guess I want to come back to the stories that we're telling, back to what we started with, which is the professional judgment piece. No matter what we do, no matter what we've done, or no matter what we're doing now, somewhere along the line, that piece turned into rules that people were following that maybe they didn't believe in, that didn't work for where they were at. And for whatever reason, that was shut down in terms of conversations, and it became this thing that became the district's work, or it became a policy work. And we really are mindful, no matter what we go forward with, that we're trying to provide a clear platform that we're operating off of. that allows for and honors professional judgment, because all of this work is actually based on professional judgment. What are the standards we're using? How are we teaching it? How are we assessing it? What ways are we assessing it? All of those types of pieces. And it was hard to hear that so many places were just complying and weren't really committed to, and that their voices were things. I think now, with the face-to-face meetings, we've had a chance to share some of those messages. Really, in the name itself, Waukesha for Learning, we're saying we need a custom fit. It does put a responsibility back on our system, though. We talk about our need to communicate some of these things, but if a school is going to use a model 80-20 or 90-10, if they're going to use homework, what we really want is for any learner in our system, a student in the class, a parent, to see the pathway to success in that classroom and to realize that they can navigate that. And so it will require some communication, but that's how we operated before this. Just rules came in, and then it was, well, what were we following the rules? So we're hoping to come back to, this is a piece that's owned at the classroom level, the building level, and we want to be able to support those conversations. And we're going to kind of be coming at it with, does it fit under the overall kind of vision of, are you assessing the students' learning, and are you able to find a way to share out how well they've done?
Are we going to stick with the numbers first, because there was 2 articles in your opinion. Are we going to stick with the numbers, or are we going to go to letters?
We still have letters at the high school right now. We are updating, you see on the clarifying the grading scale, the last one on the secondary level. We are working on models. You'll see that. It's coming forward. You couldn't do that quickly, but the whole thing about what is the mark, the course mark, or what goes out in a report card or goes to families. People have heard the analogy all week long that even at the end of the Packer season, the Journal Sentinel uses a grade because it's commonplace. So we have some of those pieces in there. We have descriptors that we will still use, which is what does it mean to be an A or advanced? What does proficient mean? That's going with normal conversation. And we still have the GPA conversions that we want and the community still needs. So we're tightening that up. We have different drafts and examples and trying to go through that. But it shouldn't be that difficult. We're looking at every place around we can to keep that as simple as we can.
Brian, yes, Dr. Lang.
Well, no, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we've made some progress, some really, really good progress in the last couple of months, and I'm very, very pleased that we're taking teacher communication and parent communication and board communication, because it's only going to make it work. We haven't talked about this over the years, except for this year. So I really appreciate that. Dr. Langeau.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're revisiting this and looking at all the, aspects and beyond. Just one quick question, and then one, philosophical kind of argument. If we say that we have a 5-point grading scale, 0 through A or 0 through, it's really a 4-point. And I think it's a little confusing because if we include now in each grade, then we really are truly a 5-point. But if we include 0, then we're 6 point. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think we have to be clear on that. That's a little crazy.
And it's coming up in
Okay.
all ways, shape, or form. And
I bet, yeah.
We got that issue in and of itself got even pushed to the forefront even more so that in a campus that was
Okay.
coming in and it said this here and it said this here and then eligibility there
And I guess I also would like to just put forward an idea and think about it. I know when we met on this, and maybe, 5 more years ago anyway, when this was first kind of implemented with all of its, pluses and minuses, there was a great disagreement. I remember we met upstairs and we met with all these different groups of teachers. And people used homework in different ways. Well, then it seemed like suddenly that was kind of out with the bathwater. And I think that it would be really interesting, and I would like to listen as teachers look at those who use homework, why, and those who don't, why. And I think just in terms of philosophy of education and how students learn and how you measure that learning, all of those things, go back for 100 years or more. And I'd like to just engage or have our teachers engage in that, where maybe more experienced teachers might say, well, I really see this value, and not just what Bob was saying, not just so that, oh, this is a student who, shows up with their hair braided right every day or something, that's not the point. So I really think that, as we look at that with a range of 100% summative, whatever, then That's all on the test. I mean, that sounds like law school. You take one exam at the end of the semester, everything is on that exam. Oh, my God. So, I mean, then we're leaning toward that, right? Or do we have, more of a mix? And if we do, why? And does homework have value? If not, tell us why. If it does, tell us why. And I haven't heard that, I've heard little bits of that discussion, but I'd really like to hear more, because I think when this first came up, I know a lot of parents called, all of us, I think, maybe, those years ago, and said, my child or my son is a good homework doer. Okay, so maybe he gets a star on the chart, but he learns a lot from doing the homework. And if you throw that out, then what have you done to a student who learns like that? So, I think I'd like to see us engage in that in terms of a real philosophical discussion, and not just
Do or don't.
throw it out or do or die, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think everybody that we talked to agrees with what you just said.
Okay.
I mean, the reason this was such a topic was at the high school level, teachers were seeing that it was detrimental that they didn't have, that students weren't seeing those habits through. Some that stuck with it was fine because they saw the bigger picture, but they were trying to find the difference between practice and homework and points and learning, and it got all caught up and wrestled up, but there was no doubt, and almost every teacher we talked to values homework, values practice. The conversations have shifted to what is quality practice. We're no longer seeing do 100 problems just for the sake of 100 problems.
Oh,
It's
right.
been redesigned and really purposeful. So I think we want to dive into that, because we
Okay,
had a
good.
pretty good debate on Monday, closed door, talking about grading scales. And when we got up to the A level or the advanced level, the debate was students are able to, and we're using different terms, but apply at higher levels or show consistent understanding of learning. And we kind of were challenging, well, is the student getting an opportunity to do that in class, or are they expected to just have come up with that higher level on their own? And then it went into are they getting homework or practice that's having them practice that skill at a higher level, or is it that they're getting a basic level but have to do it out? It was really a good debate, and so it really led us to the main work of this. Once we get this scale out and we get some of this great Infinite Campus work, is around what does the daily instructional model look like? What are students getting to think about, practice, whether it's in class with labs, whether it's at home with homework, whether it's when they're reading, and are we getting assessments that get at, are they getting the time to practice their learning experience and getting assessed on those experiences? Because that's the question. But I think back to the homework piece, I think we showed through this trial and error that it's a really valuable component to learning, which is getting out of the classroom and having this practice.
And not just practice, you can learn
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
a lot doing
Yeah.
homework. If you have a
absolutely.
good homework.
Without a doubt.
It's
And
not just
that's,
practice, yeah.
and then we were hearing things, honestly, we were hearing that if teachers were seeing that they couldn't count on the students to do the homework, that then they were using class time as the time for them to do that type of learning that they were hoping they were doing outside of class, and then it was sort of shortening the amount of time that they were it was really had this huge effect, and that's where that rule in and of itself, from rules to guidelines, really was working against what we were hoping was happening in a classroom setting. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate the discussion. I think we've discussed some very, very important things tonight, and I thank the committee for the amount of time that we have expended on wonderful conversations about some very important things. So thank you, Ryan. Great agenda. Thank you, Joe. Thank you to all of you, all those of you in our audience who participated. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 3rd, and the meeting is adjourned.
Or whenever that baby wants to